Shadows Literary License Podcast episodes. Ben Stokes here, exploring all things Collinsport, Maine, and following the likes of the Collins family and the friends and foes with your co-hosts Tom Diamond, Jesse Fultz, Vickie Rae, and Keith Chalgo. Collins family, story about blood relations, literally.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're discussing Dark Shadows, episodes 396 to 418. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us today. We have special guest co-host with us today, Roger Davis. Hello, Roger.
Wait a second. Oh, it's me. Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you in spirit. I'm with you in video. And I know what you're feeling. I know exactly what you're feeling right now. You know what it is? All right. Say. So instead of trying to be cute, I'll try to answer directly and be very glum. Okay. Look, the economy, it's only about the economy. Vote the economy. Vote the economy. No, we don't want to vote the economy, you schmuck. No, just vote the economy. No, I'm sorry. I've been watching the debates too long.
Hi, guys.
Hey, okay. Everybody. Happy Halloween to all.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for having me.
We love having you. Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure to have you. It really is. And you're the first Dark Shadows star who is a co-host of our podcast. What a dubious distinction, Roger.
Very.
You know something? I will wear it as a badge of honor for the next, for the duration, which for me, guys, is, moot. Okay, so let's continue.
Absolutely.
You'll be around for a long time, Roger. I'm going to make sure of that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Jesse Fultz isn't with us because he's doing some incognito work for us for our Bewitched episodes in Salem, Massachusetts, and we should have some pictures and some ongoing commentary from him for next month for our Bewitched episodes. So before we get started, let's find what everyone's been up to since last time we spoken to. Starting with you, Tom. What have you been up to since last time we spoke to you?
Well, first of all, my weight is my weight loss, which everybody has been apprised of, is steady at 88, at around 87 or 88 pounds. And Roger, you still there?
Yeah. Yes, I'm doing a podcast. Just come right on in, get your machine, bring it in. You'll see.
Excellent, excellent.
Everything's ready for you.
So what I wanted to do was to thank Roger.
You have a new wax ring. Yes, sir. I have the plumbers have just arrived, but they're going to be quiet as they tear off the toilet and snake out the drain. Okay.
Well, we're very happy to we appreciate the accommodation, by the way.
Yeah, life goes on. You're wondering what I'm doing. I'm filtering the toilet. I'm going to empty the garbage. I've got lunch with Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr?
Well, it's a joke.
Oh, okay. Peter Bradford would have probably had lunch with him, but
yeah, maybe so.
True. It was just a joke.
I understand. Anyway, I was about to thank Roger on the air because Roger has been a source of support for me while I have been losing this, and he has been extremely. He's always been encouraging and gives me a lot of motivation to proceed with this. So thank you, Roger.
You're entirely welcome. You know something? I think that everybody may or may not know you're down to 288, down from what?
I'm down to 260. I'm actually down to 260 from 346, something like that.
Holy moly panoli.
Okay.
Wow. Now,
moving on.
I am pressing him to get down to 200, and I want you all to do the same.
We will indeed. okay, so as far as I'm doing and everything, we're the big news is the upcoming Dark Shadows Gala event on Halloween night, which and for those of you who don't know about this already, a number of the cast are getting together for a reunion. Roger is included. And that's going to be Saturday, October 31st, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and I guess it will be 8 p.m. Central, and whatever times in the U.S. To be adjusted to. But of course, you guys internationally take care of that as well. But that's a big event in the Dark Shadows world. For those of you who are interested, go to Catherine Leigh Scott's website, www.catherineleigh.com, and this will be done off YouTube, and the YouTube link is on Catherine's website. So that's the big thing in Dark Shadows. Other than that, I am doing fine. Very busy. Looking now at the what is it? The Bly House. Is it the Haunting of Bly House or Bly Manor?
Bly Manor.
Boy, is that good. That's good. That reminds me of Dark Shadows, by the way. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but that reminds me of Dark Shadows, and that just started. And I think that's definitely also Enola Holmes, which is the movie, and I think I might have talked about that last time. That's on Netflix, I believe. And what else? And Ratched, I understand, surprisingly, has gotten extremely good reviews. And we talked about that last time also. So I recommend those three. So now I'm going to shut my mouth, and Keith, go right ahead.
And we're on to Vickie. What have you been up to?
Well, the usual. What did I watch? Oh, I watched John Carpenter's Vampires, the 98. I just love that. I don't know why I love that one. I just do love it. I love James Wood, though. Anyway, I have to shout out to Hex and Arcane for Joe, because I love watching their show, too. They find all these horror movies that I've never heard of, like The Creeping Terror and Terror Creatures from the Grave. I've never even heard of these movies, but they're just fun, good, clean fun. And Fantasy Island. Did you watch the new Fantasy Island, Keith? Or anybody?
I watched the film.
There's a new
it's really dark. I wasn't expecting that. It was definitely not what you'd see Ricardo Montalban doing on, the regular show. And of course, I did finish The Haunting of Bly Manor, and I watched Mad Men, 82 version, just because it's Halloween time and I like watching all that good stuff. And Asher's got his state races this weekend, and he's got a surprise party here this afternoon for his birthday. So it's been kind of one of those weeks. But it's just the usual for me, just doing that grandma.
So, Roger, what have you been up to since last time we spoke to you?
Well, let's see. Architecture is most of my life. Architecture has always been there, no matter what I've been doing. It's, as I say, it's my delight, and the putting up and pulling down my favorite amusement. So I built hotels, high-rises. I design them. I've designed a 21-story high-rise on a napkin, Park Avenue high-rise, taking it to a bank, and, God bless him, he loaned me $53 million to build it. In about 2 weeks, I got the money. The Metropolitan Life Insurance Company used to be my partner, so I was kind of their golden boy for a long time. So I could say, oh, I want to do this. Oh, I love that hotel. I'd love to do that over. Carte blanche. So now I'm doing over a big home over in Beverly Hills, and I have 17 men working this morning, and I'm here at the house, one for you and two for the rooter man who is here to root out. I live in the Hollywood Hills, and roots get into your pipes. So, and if you listen, roots have gotten into my pipes, haven't they? All right, now, do I make any shows or do it? Voiceovers I do, yes. Only campaigns. I don't do just a little voiceover. But if someone comes and says, you know, I've got a sizable amount of money, it's a campaign. So the last one I did, you know, it's up in Telluride, Colorado, and it's a big, you know, it's a huge real estate project that they're doing, and I'm doing all the voiceovers for it. But every now and then you'll hear my voice. I'm around. Now, as far as acting is concerned, there's no acting, guys. We're closed down out here in Hollywood.
You still are. You still are.
Hollywood is it doesn't exist. Okay, there's nothing going on. There are a few television shows like you know, Chicago PD. They shoot in Chicago, but the studios are shut down. So that's the name of that too. Now, I live in the Hollywood Hills. After 30 years, I sold my big 10,000 square foot house in Malibu, and I moved into the Hollywood Hills. And I'm living now. What you're seeing, where you're seeing me, is over one corner of my living room. That's kind of what I'm doing. I've reached a point in my life where, what's that song with? I've made all my money and made all my friends. I've got a couple of CL 500 Mercedes Benz, one white and one black. I've got 4 trucks. I'm my home here is next to the largest single infill project ever done in the Hollywood Hills, which I designed and built. So now look, if right now Jack Nicholson were to walk through my door there, he would say, Raj, you telling him you're something other than a goddamn actor? And I go, no, I'm an actor. What are you talking about? Because at my roots and whatever I am, I'm an actor. Okay. Mm-hmm. Proud of it. In fact, right behind me here, if I told you what happened yesterday and what happened this morning, I've been on the phone since 6:30 trying to coordinate. Oh my God, never mind. But now look, I still have great fond memories of Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows is it's a part of my life almost every day. There's nowhere I go. If I go down to eat lunch at the farmer's market, or I go to have dinner at Koi, it doesn't matter the sophisticated place or the pedestrian place. People come up and say, hey, weren't you Peter Bradford? You're on Dark Shadows. I see you every day. Well, it never leaves you. It never leaves you. So,
and it never leaves us either.
No.
Never leaves us either.
Wait, where's Vickie? Oh, never mind. Okay. So
see, that's the beauty of it, Raj. The beauty is that, and I always say that yes, you're an actor at your roots, but you have been able to go beyond the scope of the actor and do other things with your life, and that also deserves merit, and that deserves to be acknowledged.
Yes.
The various.
I once had a shirt company, and I sold to Nordstrom and Neiman's and Saks and Bloomingdale's and Corte Inglés in Spain and Falabella in Chile and Damaru in Japan. I mean, the biggest stores in the world.
Yeah.
And when I would go back to my hometown of Louisville, you know what they'd say? Well, Roger Davis, he's not an actor anymore. He's in T-shirts.
That's cute.
They thought of T-shirts like what's that song by Jim Croce? You know, he's got an extra pack of cigarettes rolled up in his T-shirt sleeves.
Don't mess around with Jim.
Yeah. They thought of T-shirts as novelty items when I was selling these fancy shirts at $55 and $65 a shirt. And so anyway, listen, I am happy to be here. Want to talk about Dark Shadows.
Great.
I remember the very day that I was cast by Dan Curtis, and it's kind of a wonderful little story, but you may have already heard it, so you tell me if you want to hear anything.
And as far as what I've been up to, I've been writing my book reviews, so I'm getting those out. Of course, you can find those on Tumblr and Facebook and Goodreads on our Goodreads page. And 2 books that we need to mention is Trio by William Boyd, which is about movie making in the 60s in Britain, which is a total fiction, but it's excellent. And one of the best books I read is Zeus is a Dick, written by Susie Duncan, which basically deals with Greek mythology, tells the whole Greek mythology stories and gives it a modern twist. So I suggest everyone read that. As far as another thing that we've been up to is we will, if you sign up to our newsletter at www.llpodcast.com, and you will be able to get 30 days free from the Killer Channel, which shows 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s horror films for free for 30 days before you sign. And then you can, of course, if you do like it, you can sign up for $3.99 per month for some excellent things. And on that channel, I watch Willard and Ben. So, yay, excellent. So before we get started, let you know that Story Geek, unfortunately, who does give us a rundown of what you can watch and what you can download and stream during this COVID virus, is not with us today because they started a new job, but he'll be with a double episode for us to input for our soap episode next month. And what we're going to do now is cut to Out of the Shadows with Tom Diamond discussing all the bloopers and what can be found behind the scenes of Dark Shadows.
This is Out of the Shadows with Tom Diamond.
Hi, everybody. Tom Diamond here for Literary License Podcast, and here we are. It's Happy Halloween to everybody, and we are now in the episode block 396 to 418, and among the stars who appeared during this block, Roger Davis stands out as the really new addition. Roger Davis appears in 404, 412, and 413, starting in his role as Peter Bradford, the law student who's doubling as a prison guard at the Collinsport Gaol, and who meets Vickie Winters and thus begins the start of a very interesting relationship, and of course he helps her out in terms of defending her at the witchcraft trial. Roger has a long career with a lot of accolades, too numerous to mention, but among them 6,000 plus voiceovers over the course of 40 or 50 years. He was on Alias, Smith and Jones, and the Twilight Zone episode with Diana Hyland. He has done a lot of work outside of Dark Shadows as far as acting is concerned. He currently is into real estate and architecture, and he has been a hotel owner, and he also has owned his own clothing business. So Roger has done a lot of things, and we're very happy to have him today as the first guest co-host for this Dark Shadows block. Moving on, Arlene Sand is the stand-in for Angelique when Jeremiah picks her up and is going to put her into the grave. Timothy Gordon returns, of course, as the ghost of Jeremiah in episodes 396 and 397. Addison Powell returns as the voiceover for Jeremiah in 396, but more importantly, his first actual TV role as Judge Madigan in episode 404, and Judge Madigan is the judge that Barnabas recruits to try and defend Vickie. And Addison Powell will come back when we leave the 1795 arc in a very important role. Paul Kirk Giles returns as Reverend Bland. Only interestingly enough, when he was on a few weeks ago, it was as Reverend Brooks, so somehow his name was changed. So he returns in episodes 396 and 397, and he is finally given a credit in episode 397 as Paul Giles. And of course, Paul Giles was famous for Fox Theater presentations in 1948, Pulitzer Prize Playhouse in 1950, and he was also had some Broadway credits: Born Yesterday, Wilderness, and Pillar to Post. And Giles passed away April 27th, 1976. Tom Gorman makes an appearance in episode 401 as the jailer, Mr. Prescott, and also as the second servant, casket bearer, when Barnabas dies, and he's one of the people who carry the casket out of the house. Tom Gorman passed away October 2nd, 1971. Peter Murphy, who is always coming back as extras, returns as Barnabas sleeping in the coffin when it's opened when it's open for the first time. Special mention to Bill Baird, who does the Bat Puppet on Dark Shadows now, where the bat attacks Barnabas, as well as some other appearances. And Bill Baird with Cora Baird were very famous in the 1950s on the Today Show, as well as the Shirley Temple Storybook, and he started out the TV show called Life with Snarky Parker back in the 1950s. Very famous puppeteer that New York natives will know about. Jack Stamberger played the doctor evaluating Barnabas for the plague in episode 408, and he was in Love of Life as far as that soap opera was concerned. Now, Ruby Tate appears, and Elaine Hyman plays Ruby Tate in 414. She is the first on-screen person in 1795 that Barnabas attacks, although the plot talks about two other people that he has gone after. And Elaine Hyman passed away earlier this year, actually, recently, on March 12th of 2020. Elaine Hyman had not been in acting for a while, but then she revived her career, and she was actually in The Sopranos, playing Dot in an episode in 2004. She was also in Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and she is credited for her appearance in the movie Toma in 1974. And it's interesting that everybody apparently was really surprised that she was able to revive her career after not having been in acting all those years. But she is remembered as Ruby Tate on Dark Shadows, and she will come back for a silent appearance, but that's later on as Ruby Tate, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but just give you a little peek. Also, episode 415 was the last episode for Sharon Smythe, the demise of Sarah, and a tear still comes to my eye when I see that. She is not seen on Dark Shadows after episode 415, which is unfortunate. The 397 episode, incidentally, is also the first episode with the new Josette's theme, which was written by Robert Cobert. And also, for the first time, you actually see that music box. After all these weeks in 1795, somebody remembered it, and so we now see Angelique seeing a present, picking which apparently can't come in from France, and here is Josette's music box with the theme. As far as bloopers are concerned, this block actually had less bloopers than we normally see. I think they were really trying to clean up their act, but yes, indeed, there are a few, and I'll go through them quickly. In episode 396, of course, we talked about the Jeremiah tombstone spelled I-M-A-H instead of the actual E-M-I-H. Amazon Prime mentions the fact that that Josette's name as the beloved wife, survived by beloved wife, is not mentioned in Jeremiah's tombstone. I don't know if that's a blooper or not. I think that's an optional thing as far as whether you want to mention surviving spouses, children, etc. But indeed, that is something to look at. The closed captioning, if you're looking at episode 396, points to a line where I believe Angelique is talking, and it says, may have plotted her own destruction. That's what she's supposed to say, and the closed captioning says her own distraction. In episode 396, Vickie is coughing while she speaks. She tries to stifle a cough. 397 is noted for a crew member's hand pulling the door open. to usher in Jeremiah's ghost as it appears to Angelique. The doors are supposed to open by themselves, but indeed the door, you can see the crew member holding the door. I think it's on the right-hand side. Joan Bennett makes a voiceover gaffe in episode 397. By the way, that last blooper was also, with that crew member's hand, was also 397. Joan Bennett states, if Abigail is right, there is a rich witch among us. So she changed that word. Okay, and in episode 398, and this is a writer's thing, Angelique calls Victoria Vickie. Well, Abigail made a big deal about the fact that Vickie is not a name that is used in the 18th century, and she should be called Victoria. So how does Angelique know how to call her Vickie? In 399, and don't quote me on this, but I believe Sharon Smith is looking at the teleprompter, episode 400, of course, has a famous blooper of Angelique lighting the House of Tarot cards, Heart of Fire and Heart of Ice, and the crew member overdosed the House of Tarot cards with lighter fluid. So they burned too quickly, and so while Laura Parker is trying to get out her lines, she has to mumble them pretty fast as the House of Cards is burning up. And those really detailed fans can see a script in the divan to the left of the scene, which is clearly visible, not at first, but I think you can start seeing it when Angelique is looking at the crumbled ashes. In episode 401, the end, when Ben is writing out the A for Angelique in the sand, Frid says V for Victoria in episode 401 at the end, but then in the beginning in episode 402, when they redid the scene, he does not say V. So there's something that you can take on the subway for $2.75, as they say in New York. Okay, in episode 404, very interesting, the terrace of Collinwood has the 1960s patio furniture stacked away in the back. The 1960s patio furniture obviously is not invented in 1795. They just put that away. Okay, and as we move on, in episode 405, this is a good one. Before the bat bites Frid, you can see a shadow of the bat puppet flapping against a chair in the old house as Frid is doing his lines. It's on the right hand portion of the screen in the old house living room, and you can see you can very plainly see the shadow of the bat puppet, and that's before the bat actually appears to attack. It's waiting in the wings. Episode 410, just interesting, in fact, that this is the first time the word vampire is mentioned in the show. Before that, it was The Living Dead or other abstruse references. In episode 411, the big murder scene where Barnabas kills Angelique, and Barnabas's left hand grasps Angelique's throat. But of course, Jonathan Frid is right-handed, so he takes his left hand away, and he makes sure to grab her with the right hand. Probably to get a better grip, which is kind of nice. And in the meantime, Angelique is screaming, so she's trying to distract. The famous blooper also in episode 411, while Barnabas is choking Angelique, the camera starts to pan to the right, and you can see a crew member in the background who walks away. And then, as the camera continues to pan, there's another crew member, I believe, sitting down in the back, and he has a blue shirt, and he gets up and runs away as the camera passes. So that's really cool. In episode 413, Sarah mumbles a little blooper. I believe Josette has been happy for a long time, where actuality she was trying to say that she was unhappy for a long time. Getting back to episode 396, Angelique finds a doll as she's packing, Sarah's doll, in her suitcase, and Barnabas says to her, "What's that doing in her suitcase?" instead of "What's that doing in your suitcase?" And That's it. They didn't do a bad job this time. Not too many bloopers. There's still a few, but not like there was when we talked last year about the strike that affected the actors, and I used to count 40 bloopers an episode. Here there are maybe 16 or 17. So that gets me off the hook, and thank you very much for listening. And now let's get back to the show.
This is the Collinswood News with your co-hosts, Vickie Rae and Jesse Fultz, bringing you all the news from Collinsport, Maine. Take it away, Vickie Rae and Jesse Fultz.
Hello, I'm Vickie Rae.
And I'm Jesse Fultz, and this is the Collinsport News.
Angelique is visited by the ghost of Jeremiah and is buried alive in a grave. She screams and shouts, and for some reason, she seems to be shocked by this, considering that she really doesn't take responsibility for any of her actions. While she is carrying on and being covered by dirt, Barnabas hides Victoria to keep her safe from the dastardly Reverend Trask and his mistress of misery, Abigail Collins.
Angelique seems to have survived being buried alive by an oddly voiced Jeremiah, who apparently underwent a voice change operation along with having his head wrapped in what looks like bloody toilet paper.
Yeah.
Maybe Jeremiah died due to the fact that he was shot in the chest and they performed medical surgery to his head, and instead, despite the fact that there aren't any doctors in Collinsport at the moment. As we move further along, we see Angelique blackmailing Barnabas to marry her. Angelique and Barnabas are now to be married, but with this, a not-so-ghostly Jeremiah comes up from the grave again to threaten the witch. What she still doesn't seem to understand is when you do the crime, you have to do the time.
The not-so-bright Ben is called to do the bidding of Angelique once again and to steal a ribbon from Abigail so Angelique can do another spell, this time on the mealy-mouthed Abigail. Of course, Ben, doing covert operations, is not his forte, and he gets caught threatening his place and employment with the Collins family.
In her flights of fancy, Abigail calls on and insists that Reverend Trask be summoned again to find and destroy the witch. Okay, excuse me, I hate to break from the script and whatnot, but can someone please tell me how they summon people? Does Ben get on his horse and scream, "The witches are coming, the witches are coming"? Also, when someone is on the brink of being fired, who goes off to summon people to come to the house? There doesn't seem to be any real maids or servants running around the place. Do they use carrier pigeons? If anyone out there is in the real world would like to give us the answer and more, please email me at info@llpodcast and let us know. The best answer will get a literary license podcast hoodie. Okay, now back to the show.
Angelique, always the friendly wench, finds out where Victoria is hiding, which is in the house. Great hiding place, folks. I guess they had no more sets to film in. Anyway, Reverend Trask is outside with his witching stick as if he's looking for water whilst using chalk drawings of the letter BW in a circle. And isn't this witchcraft? Shouldn't this be more practice than what you preach? Trask is humble mumble jumbling at the front door, and Angelique is setting Victoria Winter's room on fire, causing her to run out. Apparently, there isn't a back door to the house, or she is not the brightest flame in the fire. Oh, I made a pun.
Yeah, stop doing that. Stick to something you were good at, like reading the news. Barnabas finally takes the hint and suspects Angelique of being the witch that everyone is searching for. He thinks playing a game with Ben to write out her name through the power of writing with the illiterate is somehow the best idea. Ben then confirms that Angelique is indeed the witch.
Barnabas thinks that the best way to deal with Angelique is with poison, which he does unsuccessfully due to the fact that Naomi decided to drop in for a spot of sherry. Damn you, Naomi. Barnabas removes the glass and tries polite conversation with his mother and his new bride. After Naomi leaves Barnabas, he vows to put a stop to Angelique's villainy.
Barnabas sneaks out of the house, leaving an angry and frightened Angelique, quivering in her boudoir. Barnabas arranges to meet Josette and discuss his concerns with her whilst Angelique sends a bat to spy on her. This, ladies and gents, is what we call foreshadowing made more popular in Dickens novels, and we are covering Dickens in our December issue of Classic Novels, Book to Screen from the Literary License podcast when we cover A Christmas Carol. That is December 2020, back to screen and everything in between, A Christmas Carol.
And that was a shameless promotion. I did not write this. We all know who did. Poor Victoria is locked in a cell, not feeling well, when Peter Bradford comes to call whilst Victoria is up against the wall. He says that I will attest to your innocence and help you get back to where you are from. Hence, I will represent you to give you a bang, which will hopefully stop you from being hanged. I am a poet. Don't you know it?
Maybe don't give up the day job. Barnabas pleads for Josette to leave town, but Josette, with her Bambi eyes, seems bewildered about the danger that she may be under. Barnabas then goes home and shoots Angelique point blank and then hits her in the shoulder, nowhere near the heart and failing to puncture even a lung. So now we know Barnabas can't hit hard enough to tickle and is an awful shot unless he does it 20 paces away during a duel.
No kidding, man. How do you miss the target that close? Anyway, Angelique, in her dying breath, curses Barnabas to the spirit of the night, saying that everyone he loves is doomed and he will be cursed until eternity. Barnabas, in shock, puts his back against the wall where a large bat comes down and bobs up and down to bite him in the neck. You can almost not see that string, too. Why he doesn't swat it away or run away is anyone's guess. Where did this bat come from? Down the chimney, through a letterbox, or did it open a window and enter in?
Barnabas is delirious and inches ever so close to death's threshold. Apparently, he has been struck with a curious form of rabies. Angelique has now fully recovered from her gunshot wound. I guess she took the bullet out of her shoulder herself. She is one tough broad. Angelique struggles to keep Barnabas alive to prevent the curse from taking effect. It seems that she can deal out her curses but has no way to stop them. This is a lesson to you out there, kiddos. Be careful what you wish for.
Josette appears, sobbing and worried about her beloved Barnabas, and we all know that Josette sobs and worries and sobs. Barnabas doesn't recognize her, and she does what one does when one is distraught. She goes nosing around the house and discovers the Collins family history book brought through time by Victoria. She skips to the book like a person Googling her own name to realize she is to commit suicide. Of course, she is not very happy and for some reason cannot fathom why she has lost control over her destiny and decides to run around distraught.
Before he dies, Barnabas promises Josette that he will return for her, which is probably not the best promise for one to make whilst they're on their deathbed. Personally, I would be like, nah, that's okay. You can go on to hell or heaven or wherever you're going to go when you die, and maybe I'll see you on the other side when my time comes, okay? Josette seems okay with this, though, and as he draws his last breath, a bat flies out of the old house. I'm telling you, this place really needs an exterminator for the recurring bat problem.
Yeah, seriously. Angelique goes to Barnabas's tomb, which for some reason is in a hidden room of the mausoleum. Why does this tomb have a hidden room, and why is Barnabas put there when no one knows about the curse outside of Angelique and Ben? It seems like Angelique had a busy day of doing what witch widows do and can only visit Barnabas's tomb at sunset. After acquiring a wooden stake from a willow tree made by Ben, she decides to drive a stake through Barnabas's heart. Instead of just doing it and getting the job done, she hesitates, which doesn't go well. Why do they always...
Fresh from the grave, Barnabas awakens with all the pent-up frustration toward his newlywed witch bride. He decides that he will finally do what he's been trying to do all this time and chokes her to death. You have to wonder if she'll stay dead considering Barnabas's track record and considering the simple fact that no one stays dead in the show. And apparently her blood is too sour to drink. After her death, he comes to the realization that he needs the blood of others to survive. A wasted kill is a wasted meal, so why not drink from her terrified cadaver?
Back at the Collinsport cells, Peter secretly allows Victoria to temporarily leave her jail cell to get the Collins family history book. She magically appears in one of the bedrooms. Why she couldn't sneak out when she was being hunted the same way when she was being able to sneak it is anybody's guess to get in one of these rooms in and out. She gets caught by Natalie and she pleads. She rushes out and goes back to jail as if she hasn't left. Once you were discovered, why would you go back to your cell?
Naomi goes to visit Victoria at her cell, and Victoria urges Naomi to keep Sarah inside. She tries to tell her that Sarah is in danger, and Naomi said that she would try her best. Unfortunately, her best is not good enough, and Sarah runs out into the night when she sees Barnabas stalking the ground, staring up into the windows. Barnabas runs out of sight to feed on hookers at the docks while showing how messy of an eater he is. Bloodstains galore. Sarah runs around outside in the rain in her nightdress and gets locked inside the Collins family tomb.
Sarah ends up back home, delirious with flu, cold, COVID, whatever. Who knows, but whatever it is sure quick. Barnabas gets sneaked in by Ben to see Sarah tossing and turning in her feverish sleep. She is now scared of Barnabas. As Barnabas leaves, Sarah dies, and Barnabas is now guilt-ridden over her death. He tries to get Ben to drive a stake through his heart.
Ben does consider this, but Angelique's ghost scares and taunts Ben, telling him that the curse that she placed on Barnabas must continue through eternity. At the same time, Barnabas agrees to meet with Josette and struggles to keep from baring his teeth and feeding on her. Considering he is just a baby vampire, he still has some teething to do.
And oh dear, I guess maybe we should just end this now?
I agree. And on that note, I'm Jesse Foltz.
And I'm Vickie Rae, and this was the Collinsport News.
Hello, welcome back to the Literary License Podcast. And that what you just heard was Into the Shadows, which gave us a synopsis of what happened in Dark Shadows for episodes 396 to 418. So we're at our Shedding Some Light episode, and starting with you, Vickie, let's talk about these episodes.
These episodes. I guess about these episodes, I think I got, I guess the major thing that caught my eye and ear throughout the whole thing is how Angelique and Barnabas kind of bounce off each other a lot during this. They have a whole lot of intense scenes, and we finally get to the point where the vampire curse comes at this point. And is it Abigail? I think the Abigail and Trask are like totally into their element, you know, of wanting to burn people at the stake, hang them, whatnot. And Victoria is trying to escape from jail, and Angelique has her dying breath of cursing, and then she doesn't die. It's a soap opera. But I thought these are really actually fun episodes. This is the stuff I think that when, you know, we were kids when it came out, but I do think that these are the episodes that probably start ringing in everybody's mind, because this is, you know, the beginning of everything that happened before we go back to the 1960s. So I really enjoyed this particular block of episodes. Jeremiah and how he's coming from the grave. And I don't think that was him that played that, was it?
No. It was Timothy Gordon. It was Timothy Gordon who did Jeremiah.
Anthony George would have been too expensive to come back with his head coverings.
Especially considering he was shot in the chest.
I think they got the stunt. They got the stunt man in.
Well, to keep looking at it, I go, that doesn't look like Anthony George, but yeah, I kind of like that part. I always find it funny how they, you know, bring their dead back and how they look, because it's, you know, they did pretty good for back then. And that's why I can honestly say my mother probably would never let me watch this, because it always scared the bejesus out of me when I was little. But when you watch it with older eyes, it's so much fun, you know, and you just realize, wow, you know, it's so good that they're back and people are watching it. The stuff with the stars are still around, like our esteemed guest here. And it's just a lot of fun revisiting all this stuff, because it is kind of a time hop.
I have to sit there and say, though, I found that the Collins family, when someone dies, they don't go through a long period of mourning.
No, they don't.
It's like they're dead. Next day, okay, what's next, sort of thing. So, thought that was
going to die next? They don't seem very upset. Was it little Sarah dies during this?
I was going to say,
and you would think that. Well, Barnabas was really.
And Angelique dies, and no one misses her.
I know. It's just like, well, she is interred in the mausoleum. But you kind of feel bad, because that was kind of a really good scene between Jonathan Fred and Sharon Lentz when they did that, because he really loves his little sister. You could actually see that in that particular episode. And she's probably the one person he consistently loves throughout. He doesn't ever change. Other people, he either loves them or he hates them. But his little sister, that was a really good scene, I thought.
Yeah, that was episode 415, and and I still a tear almost comes to my eye when I think of that final scene where Sarah tells Barnabas that she loves him, and he's holding her, and it's a shame that Sharon Smith Lentz was not asked to come back after that. But I think that this block. You have the plot lines essentially are as Vickie started to point out. You've got Barnabas becoming the vampire.
Richard.
You've got Barnabas becoming a vampire. You've got whatchamacallit. You've got Vickie being arrested. You've got Vickie being arrested. You have and there are a couple, and of course you have Angelique's murder, and the part where Vickie is arrested, by Trask, who Jerry Lacey's on for one episode, and he does his usual "by the judge of the quick and the dead," and makes her come out of the house, and that
was a very good Trask.
Oh yes.
But I have to say though, now that we have you here, why did Peter let her go back to her cell after she escaped it?
Why did Peter let her go back to her? Well, because that was part of the deal, and that's what I'm going to talk to Roger about. Roger was in 3 episodes in this block, and the first one. But I think an answer, and Roger, you could probably give the answer to that. But I got the impression that Peter, because you're into the character, that Peter Bradford was a really honest guy, and he was going to he was very sincere, and he was a law student working also as a jail guard. So he was going to do what he had to do in order to keep up with the honesty. Did you study for the Bradford character, or was there any prep involved for that, or did you just decide to go with the flow, or did it just evolve? How did that happen?
I was doing a play off Broadway called MacBird. It was a political play. There was 22 people in the cast, but there were really only 2 great parts. One of the parts was I played the Bobby Kennedy role, and MacBird was Stacy Keach. And the whole idea was that Bobby was avenging the death of his brother, and purportedly MacBird and Lady MacBird, Art Johnson and his wife, killed John Kennedy. And it was a pretty wild show. I remember when Bobby Kennedy came to see it, Mitch Ryan was across the street doing Iphigenia with Irene Pappas, and of course I knew him anyway. I didn't really know him when he was on Dark Shadows, because he was on before I was on. But I knew Mitch in life as an actor. And he called me, this was right after the show, and he said, "Hey, come over here right away." And I said, "Yeah, I haven't even taken my makeup off yet. I just walked off stage." "Yeah, kid, keep your makeup on. Just come over here right now." So I went over, and lo and behold, opened the door to his dressing room, and there is Bobby Kennedy. And I couldn't believe he grabbed my hand and said, "Oh my God, my wife saw you in Boston, thought you were the best Bobby, played it with a little love, I understand." And I said, wow, I was speechless. And I wanted to take a picture, but he had 3 French girls with him. And he said it was not the moment to take any pictures.
That bad.
And, but that was, so we kind of all knew each other. There were people that I had come to know before Dark Shadows. Don Briscoe was 4 years with me at Columbia and in college. And basically I was the reason he got on the show, because he was good. Dan liked him. But anyway, the way this happened, Dan saw the show, saw MacBird. I got a call from my agent. He said, "Dan Curtis, the guy is doing the soap opera." I had no idea what Dark Shadows was. None. Okay. I'm prepping to do a picture for Paul Newman called Rachel, and thinking that I'm going to finally get into movies. So, because I'd been in California and done 2 series and then gone back to New York. So I was late 20s. I was about to meet the love of my life, Jacqueline Smith, and we were going to be married, and I was going to try to get her on Dark Shadows, which is one of the reasons that I was able to get a date with her and get her to see me, because I had this show and I hustled her, telling her all about the show. But Dan called me and he said, as he always, I learned how off the wall he was. And he said, I really like you. And I said, okay, great. What is this? Well, I just want you to come on a show I'm doing. It's kind of a gothic soap opera, and I just want you to be yourself. And I said, I mean, I'm not playing anybody. Yeah. You're the love interest. You're going to be the love interest opposite our reigning heroine, whose name is Victoria Winters. And I said, great. And he said, now I'm going to have to put you on camera, because I got to see, soap operas are a peculiar thing. So if you guys will remember, I had 1 show, maybe 2, I don't know. And then there was a space of about 8 days when they decided whether they had to write some shows. They hadn't written anything. They didn't know whether I would work out. So I come in as the jailer. I had the little scene with her. We had a nice rapport. I hit it off with Alexander from the start. There was kind of just a very, I don't know, maybe we both had a fondness for each other that was instant and easy to work together from that point on. But did I do 1 show, Tom, and then I was off for about 8 days?
That's right. You did 1 show, and that was obviously because they wanted to, as you said, they wanted to see if it was going to work. They
wanted to have me back, but they also, Tom, had to write some. They had to. They figured out from the rapport we had in that first scene where they were going to go. They were going to make us star-crossed lovers. Okay. Right. And so Dan, the next time he saw me, was to give me those scripts. He said, I want you to come up to the office. I want to tell you something. And he showed me the scene, okay, that hadn't aired. And he said, see this? You click. That's what I want. I like it. And I want you to do just what you're doing. And we're going to develop you this relationship into he kept using that term, star-crossed lovers, and we didn't have any problem with that.
Sure. Well, and I think that answers Vickie's question, which is that the Peter Bradford character is a steady Eddie, and he's going to do the right thing.
Right.
There to do the right thing.
Dan had, remember, he was seeing me in a show off Broadway where I carried the show, where I really was. The first thing he had to tell me was, I know you're used to being the star of the show. You won't be that here, because there are a lot of people in this thing, and it bounces one way, bounces another. It's ensemble. It's crazy. You're never, and it's going to seem crazy to you. And I want to tell you all, boy, oh boy, did it seem crazy when I got on it. I thought to myself, what in the world's going on here? Because when I first encountered Barnabas, I would watch him, and he would just blatantly look at the camera and read his lines, and I was thinking, man, this is just weird. And the people would be, they were so intense. Everyone was, and it was difficult because you got the script in the morning. You were supposed to know all your lines, but the truth of the matter was, everybody except for Barnabas, who had a lot of lines, or Angelique, she had a lot. They were very, very well prepared. But if you had fewer lines and one or two scenes, you used the process between 7 in the morning when we started reading the script till 4 o'clock when we would shoot or tape to get everything together. And the director understood that. I remember the first director I worked for was a lady, Leela Swift, great, terrific lady. And then, and she said, okay, I know you're not going to be prepared. Let's get going this morning, and everybody works hard. Let's get the blocking. And we'd go to the table and we'd read and we'd talk a little bit, a little bit of gossip. Alexander would say, guys, I'm going to get married. And everybody's going, really? Oh, man, someone's going to waltz off with you. How wonderful. Who is it? Well, it's Philip Isles. Who in the hell is that? Well, his family owns Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers? My God, you're not going to have to do Dark Shadows anymore. Where are you going to live? Oh, well, I'm going to live in a 3-story townhouse right up by the Metropolitan Museum. And everybody's, here we were. I was living in the East Village on St. Mark's Place in a 3-flight walk up. Okay.
Wow.
I mean, with 2 rooms. And and she's talking about living in this giant place, which later I went up. They were working on it. I would take her home. I had a car, so I would drive her home most afternoons when we finished. And sometimes I would park I never, I didn't go up and see the place. All I can say is that it was quite something to be up in the environs of that world. Okay. At that particular point in time. So, Dan, kept me on the show for the same reason that he put me on the show. And I think he was very open about it. I just liked Roger Davis, and I would die one day. Then the door would knock and you would say, I die as Peter Bradford, and the next day knock on the door and I'm Jeff Clark. And they go, but you look like Peter Bradford. I go, who's Peter Bradford? Okay. So now, is that a great role to play on a vampire show? The great role to play on a vampire show, as you all know, is the vampire. So playing the straight guy is, it's not a role that's ever going to take over the show. It's just, that's not what it was. But I enjoyed it. And I had, I think, I was on it probably, I don't know. It seems to me I was on, I remember when Marie Wallace came on the show.
You were on a couple of years. Years.
I remember when James Storm came on the show. I remember when that fellow Chris Pennant came on.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the show change. But all the time, the biggest problem on Dark Shadows for everybody was learning the lines. So believe me, the concentration of everyone it was a 3-camera show. We didn't stop. Every now and then we would stop. I remember an episode several times when Barnabas would really have a problem and go into gibberish and say, he was supposed to say, yes, I would love to go. And he would say, yes, I would love to. I don't think I'll go, but I'd love to. I don't think I'll go. Well, I will go. Dan would finally go, cut. Let's start again. Jonathan, you want to go. You want to go. Okay. Just answer, I'd like to go. Okay. I think that would be wonderful. Answer it. And if you have to look at the lines, just look straight at the camera for the entire goddamn scene. Okay. Don't go back and forth. Don't look at her, then look at the camera. Please just look at the camera and read the lines. Okay.
Well, that's part of.
Yeah, he would say it's the only way we're going to get through this, and we got to roll.
Well, that's part of Fritz speak, and that's one of the fans has dubbed that as Fritz speak.
Dan would say over the loudspeaker, would say, the wonderful thing, Jonathan, is it looks great when you look at the camera and read your lines. Going back and forth to the person you're working with and reading the lines doesn't work at all. So Let's just do it. Read the lines. Let's go.
So I'm going to say that it's Peter Bradford in these 3 episodes, and I looked at them very closely. Roger, your delivery of the lines was flawless. And the only thing, and I don't even know if you're aware of this, at the end of the, and of course you wouldn't because it's been so long. I mean, we're talking about stuff that happened a while ago. But at the end of that first appearance, you're leaving the door. You're letting. This first episode revolved around Barnabas and Addison Powell, who played Judge Madigan in one episode, trying to convince Vickie. Judge Madigan was going to see whether Vickie could be defended by him, and he decided it wasn't, because Vickie had this wonderful habit of telling everybody that she was from the future, and that there was a book.
Should have kept it to herself, don't you think?
And I mean, that
she should have claimed amnesia.
I mean, come on, nobody is going to accept her if she tells them.
1795, people were crazy superstitious back then.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
I mean, another thing is, Victoria is not the brightest bulb in the pack, though, is she? When it comes to, she's too honest for her own good.
Yeah,
but it's like, you might want to, you could sit there and say, I'm not from around these parts, and so. Therefore, or say, hell, she could even said that she came from an Amish family. Probably would have been better than saying I come from the future.
Yeah, can you imagine knowing what you know, even in the 60s, saying that you came from the future? That's just grounds for being hung right there.
But I still think that Victoria is the catalyst of everything that went wrong with the Collins family.
Because actually, if she hadn't gone back in time, none of this shit would have been happening.
Yeah,
that's
right. Reverberated through the centuries.
You guys need to understand. She was the cog in the wheel. You all have to see the way the writers were doing this, and it was very calculated to keep a spin going on the show. And that's really what it was. It took me a while to figure out the way they did storylines, but I finally saw that what Dan was about and love was mayhem. Got it?
Yeah.
M-A-Y-H-E-M, mayhem. He loved things being just berserk. He loved when people would say, I'm confused. Great. I'm glad you're confused. I'm confused too. Let's keep rolling. They love it.
We just like to play devil's advocate a little bit sometimes.
Sure.
What if?
Sure.
Now, I have to sit there and say that when we get Trask and we get basically she's in the house and Trask is going to bring her out and he's got his watering witching stick. I don't know why he was looking for water on the stoop of the old house, but he's got his witching stick out there.
There was so much bizarre stuff. Remember the day when I was Jeff Clark and my head goes off and rolls across the floor?
That's Charles Delaware Tate, actually, but that's further down the pike for the fans that don't know about this yet.
But you have to kind of wonder about Reverend Trask because he's anti-witchcraft, right? Meanwhile, he's performing this weird spell out in front to get Victoria out of the house. You're like, well, if you're against
basically witchcraft, especially what people don't realize, and that's what a lot of people, the pagan persuasion, so to speak. They say, because any prayer or any ritual, that's all a form of craft of something. So I digress.
But I was going to say,
though he does do lettering with chalk very, very well on us.
Right. I think Trask is a really strong character, though. Jerry Lacey, he's a really strong character. I really enjoy his
Reverend Trask is one of my favorites, actually, because
I know. He's such a butthead. You gotta love him.
Because you hate him so much. You just look at him, you just hate him.
You do love to hate him,
so therefore Lacey was doing his job,
Yeah, guys, look, my role was, I'm sure in your minds, rather ho-hum. And
I didn't think you were ho-hum at all. I thought you were like the knight in shining armor, because everybody has to have that. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
You gave balance, and you gave balance to that show. And
that's not today's women, but some of us still hold with that one value that we like to be saved by a white knight every once in a while. So.
Yeah. Well, and another thing is, by the time that Peter Bradford does enter Dark Shadows, by that time everyone's gone a bit crazy. So
Yeah,
you needed
the
that
least.
you needed that
Say the
sanity to come in and give it a both. I mean, Barnabas is, a bit thick on as far as figuring out that Angelique's the witch, even though he's being blackmailed and everything like this.
Right.
So it's taking him a while to catch on what's going on. And then when he does do it, he can kill his brother quite evenly when there's distance between them, but when he's like 5 feet away from Angelique, he can't
But
hit her hard.
technically, they were brothers, though.
It's his uncle. It's his
uncle. But they kind of grew up as brothers.
Yeah.
And, you would think that they would give each other a break being relatives. Nothing worse than fighting over a woman. And even though it was Josette, I know she's everybody's, idea of the perfect feminine, whatever.
You just had
flaky going on back and forth in these episodes, too.
Well, yeah, you just had a lot of madness going on. You had Abigail and Trask, and Victoria's, she's not the most stable at the moment because she's trying to prove herself to be, trying to prove herself, and she's trying to do right. And every time she's one of these people that no matter how good she tries to be, it always works against her. So she got that.
She's a stranger in a strange land, and that's where I think the Peter Bradford character.
He believes her, and that's what's good because someone needed to be that strong, personage behind her, because who was going to believe her? Who actually? Can you imagine going back to 1795 with a book of history to a particular family that clearly wasn't made on any press of their day? And this is going to look like witchcraft, and she knows that Josette is going to commit suicide. We know that this is going to happen. We know that that's going to happen. But going back to what Keith said, playing devil's advocate again, if Victoria hadn't gone into the past, would any of this come to pass?
No.
I think it would still come to pass, but I don't think it would have been sped up as fast as it did. Because if you remember, before Victoria goes back into the past, the dates on their deaths are different.
That's true.
And now it's
a good answer. It's a good answer.
And so I think that with Victoria going back, I don't think that she's able to stop anything. She just sped things up because, I mean, if you do have someone that knows what's going on, and she's kind of prodding a little bit, not in a malicious way, but in an innocent way. So she's actually speeding up the timeline, which is good.
Well, she wants to go home too.
Death dates.
Would you want to go home? I would want to go home.
She's in Oz. But Roger, what I was going to say was, and I referred before to your flawless performance during these 3 episodes, but at the very end of the first episode, as you're seeing Barnabas and Addison Powell out the door and you're leaving, you crack a smile as you're leaving the door. And it's for a millisecond. You have to have today's technology of the big computer screen that I have in order to, and the stop action in order to see that. But back then, nobody would have caught that. But this big grin comes across your face, and it's like you can see that you were really having fun in that minute, in that instant, in that second. I got the impression this guy's having fun with this.
I thought that you guys played off each other, you and Victoria Winters. His Peter Bradford and her played off at each other.
There was chemistry.
The chemistry was definitely there. And you could tell, I mean, I don't know if she was still in the tailspin over missing Burke, but clearly you definitely picked up the slack for her, and you guys just found each other, and that it even hint at your romance even proceeding into the future, which is kind of cool.
Well, Vickie raises an excellent point, Roger. The Peter Bradford character is really a successor to the Burke Devlin character, and that was the guy that Vickie was in love with in the present. Right.
Yes, and Dan told me when I first came in the office that he had fired him, and he wanted a different kind of guy. And he said, "What I found in you is." I like that it just seems to me you can't be anything but truthful. You have a very truthful quality. You have a very
you really did. That's spot on your character. But it's also a rather quiet, silent, strong too behind your character.
Right. That's the other thing he said was what I missed in this character before was strength, and you bring it without any effort. And
easy.
Yeah, and what being strong, strength. It's not anything you can play. You either have it or you don't. And I think that Vickie, my memory, you all are saying Vickie, I understand that, but for me, it's Alexandra. And
Sure.
we were, I remember once she said, Roger, I hope they can't see, our kisses are very intimate. I don't know, Roger. I mean, are you sure this, she got worried after a bit that we were going a little too far, but we were having fun. And of course, when I mentioned this to Dan, and he goes, Jesus Christ, do whatever you want. Are you kidding? It's great. It's great. Give me a break. I wish somebody else
had good chemistry, though. You played off each other very well. I mean, it was very complimentary, the acting.
You talk of the quiet strength.
What if you think about it on Dark Shadows, most of the people you could see them acting. Okay? You were outside watching them act. It was melodramatic. Every now and then, Angelique would be right on the money, but for the most part, it was very melodramatic, and kind of everything had an over-the-top sort of quality to it. Okay,
it was very dramatic. It's sort of like Barnabas and Angelique; they played off each other extremely well too. I mean, you had these two interactions between your character and Alexandra's character. Then you have Laura and Jonathan, and both. I mean, you're kind of like at different ends of the spectrum, but you guys did an amazing job.
Well, I know this.
If you look at there were people on the show who had outlandish characters. Trask is a perfect example, but they played them with such conviction.
Yeah.
Good God, Thayer David,
I loved him.
God, he would be spitting these things out at me, and I would thank God COVID wasn't, and I would say, he would scare me sometimes, and he would be
a very emotional actor, isn't he? He's very,
very emotional. And when he wasn't acting, he was just as calm. He would just, that guy, I never saw him eat anything other than Hershey bars and Coke. Hershey bars and Cokes. He brought in 12 packs of Cokes. He drank 24 Cokes a day, and he would bring in maybe a dozen bars, Hershey bars.
Man after my own heart.
Well, he was an ex-alcoholic, and he said, it's either this or booze. So I do this. This is my booze. And when I first, the other people on the show that really, I didn't have much to do with Catherine Leigh Scott. I didn't have any scenes. I would just kind of watch her, and we would pass in the night. And we didn't really, until the Dark Shadows movie, where there was, we had a lot of scenes that were cut in the Dark Shadows movie.
Yes.
A developed relationship that I know that Dan always wanted Alexandra Moltke to do the movie, but she was long gone and wouldn't.
That's a shame. I would have liked to have seen what she could have done in that movie, what she could have brought to it.
Just think about it. It would have been so great. But once she left Dark Shadows, she left it. And I think...
well, Dark Shadows, for some of you, is just the very tip of the pinnacle of your careers. You've all done so much more than just that one period of your life. You've accomplished a lot of things. All of them have, I mean, you guys have done all kinds of wonderful things.
But I look back and I think, mentioning the actors who really made it big, and no one, if you all think about it, no one off Dark Shadows became a megastar. But
you were to your fans, though. You have so much love and loyalty from fans. You know, you can't buy that anywhere, not even in a Fandango ticket. So
No, that's really true.
Short there, Raj. Don't sell yourself short.
I that's really true, and I want you all to know that everywhere I go every day, people say, "Wow, I know you're an actor. You're an actor. I know you." You know, and then you say, "Well, maybe so. I did a soap opera called Dark Shadows." Now, if I say I did Alias, Smith and Jones, and people are Western fans, okay,
right.
then they go crazy, you know. But every now and then someone will come up and say, you know, I saw you in Killer Bees. I saw you in Ruby. You were there. Man, what was it like to work with you know, Piper Laurie?
Sure.
Would have been great on Dark Shadows. I
agree.
Oh man, she and she watched Dark Shadows. When I did Ruby with
Dark Shadows, I noticed.
Oh, listen, there were so many people who loved the show, and I'm very, very proud and thankful that you all still are making this happen. And I've got one last little story to tell you. When I came on, remember, one of the last characters was Dirk Wilkins was the vampire.
Right.
It was in 1897. That's much later.
Yeah. Dan and I went to have lunch one day, and and he was directing the episode, and he said, "God damn, Raj, I should have you should have been Dirk Wilkins from the start." I mean, if I brought you in as this absolutely bizarre, I mean, you're so real as this vampire. And what he liked was I wasn't hokey. I wasn't fakey hokey. I was real. And I remember that afternoon was the afternoon when I grabbed to bite her. I grabbed Joan Bennett.
Yeah.
And I grabbed her and I sort of lifted her a bit off the ground, and she didn't get her footing and fell straight backwards.
Oh no.
Oh my God.
She was annoyed, and she was mad at you. She was
mad at me, and a little flask fell out of her pocket.
Listen, getting back to
it was really I don't think she ever forgave me. I apologized profusely, but I don't believe that she really ever after that was very friendly to me. Of course, a lot of people on Dark Shadows, you guys have to know there are a lot of personalities at stake. And so when we go to these shows, we're going to be meeting on Halloween. It's going to be kind of interesting because none of us have seen each other in a long time. And, someone has already warned me, Raj, don't talk about too much the stuff you do because, you do a lot of stuff. And I'm really lucky in that regard. And I think, what the hell? It's just me. It's just at this age, I should be, coasting, but I'm not. I love what I do, and I continue to do it. And tomorrow, somebody said they had a show that I could do. You never forget the work. You never forget. You're either an actor who is real and who can never be phony. And if you have that and can listen, you're an actor. You'll always be an actor. And it helps to keep your hair, and it helps to stay thin, and blah 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 blah. But
getting back to the block that we're doing, and what you're talking, and the way I can link this through is the strength that you brought. You were talking about how Dan Curtis wanted you to just be yourself with the Peter Bradford character. And you were able to, and the quiet strength that Vickie talks about, you were able to translate into that role basically by the first two words that you said during that first appearance. When you looked at Vickie, so you were flying the wall at first, you were listening to the conversation between all of them. And then you go over to Vickie and you say to her, "Don't cry." And those two words in and of itself, to me, epitomize two things. Number one, that you displayed instant empathy towards the character, instant empathy towards what she was going through. And also, you wanted to say, let me help. I want to support. Let me help. I think that's part of you, Roger. And I think that in my dealings with you, and I think that's something that a lot of fans don't know about. And it's interesting that I think you were able to bring that forward into the Peter Bradford character, and that's part of the reason why it worked.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for noticing being yourself, okay? Being who you are, allowing allowing vulnerability, okay? Vulnerability is what I see so many times are actors who can allow themselves to be vulnerable. They don't allow themselves to be human, and it's every leading man that you watch who's just Mr. Cool, perfect. Forget it. That's not what we want to see. Yeah, okay. Even the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, they've still got a level of where they seem human and vulnerable, and can. I thank you. All I can say is that I had to play lots of things on Dark Shadows. They seemed, I'm sure, that maybe I was playing the same guy, but I really tried to transition to Jeff Clark and Ned Stewart and Charles Delaware Tate.
All about Ned Stewart.
The ghost of Tate. It was all great fun, and one day I got this call from the guy who wrote Maverick, Fugitive, Run for Your Life, Rockford Files, the bold ones, saying, I want you to come to California and star in a show called The Young Country. It was a TV movie. So I'm still making Dark Shadows. And Dan, I went to him. He said, sure, you can have off. We'll write around it. And I went out for a month and did this pilot with Joan Hackett and I. And suddenly I'm working with an actress that I absolutely I was in awe of Joan Hackett. I loved her work. And here we were in this show together, and it was really fun. And it was fun to tie for the highest rated movie of the week of the year. It was fun to get, and why didn't it sell? Well, you guys know, the networks wanted to show with the guy who played, I can't even forget it. This story's going to go nowhere because I can't even. Clint Walker. They wanted a show with Clint Walker, okay? And Roy Huggins gave him Roger Davis. Well, just slightly different. So I came back to Dark Shadows to do the movie. Dan called me and said, I know you've left the show, but I'd like you to come back and do this movie. And I said, Dan, whatever the movie is, I'll come back and do it, because I owe Dan lots of favors. I didn't look at the script. I didn't say, oh, gee, I'm on my way now to bigger things. The way other people went off the show, Alexander went off to bigger and better things. It wasn't show business, but it was a life that was bigger and better, and she would never look back. I went on to bigger and better acting things, roles, but Dark Shadows was very personal, and I loved doing the movie, and I thought the Dark Shadows movie, House of Dark Shadows, was a very good vampire movie.
That's very true. In the Peter Bradford role, when you came back for the next episode, once again, they initially had you once again as a fly in the wall, and this time you're listening to Josette and the Josette character and the Natalie character played by Grayson Hall threatening Vickie because they think she's a witch. And
don't forget about Grayson Hall and how strong her performance was in these blocks.
She sure was. She sure was, and I think that the block in general has a lot. Things are moving along at a breakneck pace, and they're dealing with 4 plots at once.
Yeah,
which is not easy, and they were really able to handle it with Elon. At that point, you really got.
I tell you, that's Dark Shadows was really cooking at that point.
yeah.
Yep. When you came on board,
Barnabas dying and promising Josette he's going to come back to her, and then you got him trying to poison Angelique, but then Naomi decides to take the poison. I mean, there's just a whole lot of stuff going on.
And that poison, incidentally, was a different color than the brandy or sherry. I think it was sherry. So you could definitely see that Barnabas is putting this poison into the sherry, and it's turning it into a much darker color. Anybody could see that the two are different, but not on Dark Shadows. On Dark Shadows, as far as they're concerned, it's the same drink, which is really cool. And this is all part of the bloopers.
But they never ever bring up that part that you see in the beginning, or they're talking about how Naomi supposedly is buried with all the jewels that her admirers gave her. They kind of just let that go by the wayside.
Yeah. That's that certainly. Well, there's a lot of things that they pick up, and and the other thing was Josette's music box. And now, for the first time, you have the actual Josette's theme, right. The second version of the theme, and they decided to bring that on board. It's like they forgot all about Josette's music box for weeks. But in the second episode, that Roger appears. Roger. Peter Bradford escorts Vickie to Collinwood. Natalie discovers Vickie as Vickie is grabbing the book, and then they get back to jail. Vickie gives the book to Peter. Peter puts the book in a whatchamacallit, in a desk in the desk in the jail, and then there's a scene between Trask and Roger.
I'm remembering this.
Yeah, that's okay. There's a scene between Trask and you in the second episode, and I don't know if you remember this, where Trask is telling you. Trask wants to know if you'll testify that she was in the jail all that night. Now, this is a tough question to ask because it occurred all those years ago, but you did mention your encounters with Jerry Lacey. What was your take on the role and the conviction that he was able to bring to Trask's character?
Well, Jerry, I never thought that Jerry was one of those. He was a trained actor. He was. I had renewed respect for him. Of course, I saw him on Broadway playing the Play It Again Sam, and he was wonderful. And of course, I didn't have any idea about that. I did think when I first saw him that he had a striking resemblance in a kind of a caricature. I mean, a caricature way to Humphrey Bogart, not Humphrey Bogart.
You know what? That's exactly what I think. Every time I see him, especially when he's like the layman lawyer, he's got so much Bogart attitude about him. It's not even funny.
He looked like a caricature off the wall at Sardi's. Okay,
yeah,
the characters at Sardi's on the wall looked. Bogart could have been Jerry Lacey, or Jerry Lacey could have been Bogart.
Oh God, yeah.
That was what I immediately thought when I saw him, and I remember thinking, poor guy will never live this down, and he probably didn't. I don't think he really did live it down. He was always following in that. It's kind of a blessing and a curse,
right?
To look like that, I did a show with a guy named Ben Murphy who looked kind of like a poor man's Marlon Brando, or a poor man's Paul Newman.
And Alias Smith
But
and
he
Jones.
was neither Paul Newman nor Marlon Brando. You know, I mean, you can't, as an actor, be reminding people of someone else. Now, I have to own up to the fact that a lot of people, when they first encountered me, thought, oh, a young Henry Fonda. I was a young Henry Fonda.
Right.
And my voice, I never, ever tried to do Henry Fonda, except in a commercial once. And it was right when I started to do Dark Shadows, I got an Anison commercial and they said I was going to do the Bobby Kennedy voice. And so that I was going to say Anison has more of the one strong pain reliever that doctors recommend. Well, they said, oh, stop. We're going to get sued. Do it in your own voice. They were going to fire me. And then they said, okay, try it in your own voice. And I said, Anison has more of the one strong pain reliever that doctors recommend most. They said, wait a minute, that sounds like Henry Fonda. Can you sound more like Henry Fonda? Well, of course, for $100,000, which is what they paid, that was the biggest paycheck I'd ever gotten. So it went on the air sounding like this. Anison has more of the one strong pain reliever that doctors recommend most for pain and extension. You try Anison. Well, dang. I was into the Henry Fonda thing there, but that never entered into anything that I did from an acting standpoint. Though there were many people who said Roger Davis has, it was, they'd always mention the Henry Fonda voice, okay, which was not good. And I'm saying Jerry Lacey, it had a more serious problem because he did look just enough like you couldn't get it out of your mind when you saw him that there was something very Bogartish about his look. But I remember the scene you're talking about, Tom. I remember it very well. And I remember Jerry was, you don't know this, but Jerry was very nervous. He was very nervous. Okay. And very, was he new to the show then? He must have been.
Yes, he was.
Been on for a little bit at that point.
He was very new. Well, he had a few scenes, but he was very new.
Right. Maybe I was new on the show, but I just didn't have those kinds of nerves. My daughter, when she wanted to be an actress, she said, "God, Dad, people could come up to you and say, 'I hate you,' and it didn't bother you." Well, it's just something I've always. It's all comes from inside. And Jerry, it was very much on his shoulder. He was very nervous, but he used the nervousness well. He transposed it into the kind of angry angst kind of thing that Trask had. And
just like Jonathan did with Barnabas. Jonathan was also very nervous, and he's
Jesus Christ. That. Jonathan would come off the set and he would go, "Did that work? God, I didn't feel."
Jonathan was very nervous, but he was able to translate that into the Barnabas character. And now you come across and told about a similar instance with Jerry Lacey. Now, Jerry Lacey was also apparently very nervous, and he was able to translate that into the evil.
His scenes where Angelique were very strong too. I thought that this is a lot of the unraveling of everything that we've seen prior to this, and from the very beginning of Dark Shadows up until we start getting into all the mystery of the Angelique, and we get into what happens to Josette, and the time hop where Vickie is being accused of witchcraft, and all the interaction going on between the Dark Shadows cast, which is it's really good, actually. I liked how we have two different ends of the spectrum. We have Peter and we have Vickie Winters, and on the other hand, we have Barnabas and we have Angelique, and they're both two different entities of kind of like couples, not so much couple in that word, but a pairing, if you would. and they just all play off each other, and it's just fantastic. And it kind of makes Dark Shadows what's Dark Shadows. This is what we love about Dark Shadows, is all the intrigue and everything coming to fruition, because we've been wanting to see how this plays out with Josette ever since her name was first mentioned in prior episodes. But other than that, it was just a good block of episodes. You have Trask, and you have Abigail. You have and I'm having a moment.
Angelique.
Well, while you're
Angelique, no.
Josette.
No, not Josette.
We're playing musical. We're playing 20 questions now.
I know. I had it all down, and then I just went right out of my mind. Natalie.
All right.
And she just a fantastic job. I mean, she was kind of like in the background, but she was always there. She kind of reminded me of her doctor self in the present, because she's always trying to fix things. And even back then in the 1790s, she was still trying to fix things, and she seems to be the only one that has her shit straight.
Well, I'm going to tell you very briefly that you've got 4 plots happening at once. And you've got Angelique's murder. You've got Barnabas turning into a vampire. You've got Sarah's death. You've got the interactions. And let's not forget Millicent and what's Forbes. And Forbes, the Ditz, and oh my God, Nancy Barrett knew how to play a Ditz.
She did an excellent Ditzy.
She did.
She was just fantastic. She deserved an Emmy for that one, because I love her in this block of episodes.
But what I thought was interesting about the Nathan Forbes thing is that before Barnabas dies, he's actually concerned about Barnabas. He wants to help him. He wants to be there.
It would seem so. But, I mean, you can't really trust him, though, can you?
No, you can't. And that's why later on, and we're not going to get into that, because it's going to be later on, you're going to see later on why the evil side of Nathan Forbes comes out. But I think it's interesting in terms of this. I almost thought that maybe the writers were trying to breathe a little bit of Joe into this guy.
Yeah.
Just
a little bit, but it's very short-lived. Because he is such
but you know what I see, but you also have to. But what I also see though with this character also is that I think he is quite a good guy to begin with. But then as the male heirs start disappearing out of the Collins family,
right,
someone's going to be ripe for the taking to become the Collins gold.
Well, that's right. But he's a lech. He's a lech to begin with. Because
he's a social climber.
What do you call it when you're married to 2 people at once? Bigamist?
He's a bigamist, yeah.
Yeah, or he's trying to be a bigamist, I should
trying to be a bigamist, yeah.
And she has him by the nuts, really, when she comes into the very small part that she has.
Yeah,
but he's a social climber anyway, isn't he? So,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so you have these plots going on, and I was really admiring the way the writers were able to counterbalance all of this and juggle them. They really did a superb juggling act. And I think that this is where the people who were really able to follow complex plots in any kind of genre were very, very much attracted to Dark Shadows. If you couldn't understand what was going on, you stopped watching it.
They definitely packed a lot into 25 minutes, I can say that. And then you have Angelique, she has her dying curse finally. We finally hear the dying curse.
Mm-hmm.
We have Sarah dying, and we have the very touching scene where Barnabas is holding his little sister as she passes away. And we just have so much interaction and so much going on. We have Trask, we have Abigail.
Yep.
We have Victoria and Peter,
Right.
And we have the witch trial starting, and
I
do think they dropped the ball a little bit, though. I think that I mean, what I quite like about these episodes is they are very quick moving and they keep you very
well. You want to keep watching,
but I kind of wish there was a little bit of breathing space going on a little bit, like with Sarah's death. It'd be nice to see, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Just have to take a breath there and like see the mourning of the family, see the whole family mourn.
They don't ever cry when anybody dies, though.
Well, I mean, I think in that time people used to die
while they were dying.
Well, Barnabas was the only one upset about the little girl dying.
Well, they were crying while they were dying. I mean, you've got this whole soap opera-ish thing once Barnabas is bitten, and it takes him a few days. So they're milking all of that, and you see Joshua I didn't realize what I was doing. I was so wrong, that kind of thing. It's the way I am. You have to understand that. And then that little oh, come on. I mean, after Sarah passes away, and then you got Liz saying, the little bird has flown off into the morning, and she will be no more.
Right.
That was a little hokey, but no, I mean, you can see though, I do think that there was some mourning on the part of Naomi when, and Joshua, when Sarah died. But it basically was like a day, and then everybody moved on to the next horrible thing.
Yeah. I just thought that they did the same thing with Jeremiah dying when he died. It was kind of like, okay, he's dead. And it's kind of like
a quick duel too.
But I thought that it's almost like they were on a race because they only had a certain amount of time for this block, for this storyline. So it's almost like we need to put everything in. And I thought the lead up to it. And the thing is, I'm not saying that these episodes. I mean, I stay glued to these episodes, so I'm not saying anything that. But I'm saying in an ideal world, I would sit there and say that if I would have given it a little bit more breathing in, and I'm not saying like dedicate a whole week to this, but like just an episode, like didn't believe, so you can take a breath, because it's almost like this. It almost reminds me of like when you watch a television show and there's ratings week, where it's gonna like you need to like make sure the ratings are there this week, because if they're not, we're gonna be canceled. And all of a sudden the show just starts throwing everything at you, sort of thing, and it moves really, really fast. And it kind of had that feel to it.
Yeah.
But saying that, I'm not going to say anything against the storylines at all whatsoever, because the storylines are extremely strong. Just that it would have been nice just to, because we got to know Sarah. We know Sarah as a ghost. And then when Sarah dies, and it would have been nice to see Naomi mourning and, her husband mourning a little bit. Just an episode sort of thing. Even when Angelique dies, it's almost like she never existed. No one's missed her.
Right. Well, with Naomi, though, when you got to think about those, when the poison came up, because Barnabas wanted to poison Angelique, and Naomi gets a hold of it in whatever fashion she did. Well, she's definitely grieving. Everything is all lost to her. She's just totally given up at this point.
Yeah.
But that kind of resonated.
Joan Bennett's character has always got that bit of... She's either has a nightmare where she's gonna die, or she's like obsessed with that. So it's kind of like, so I think that when we see Naomi kind of doing that, we're kind of like, oh, here she goes again. Sort of thing.
By the way, remember that famous blooper that, of course, I talked about it when we did the blooper segment, but the House of Cards blooper, where Angelique was burning the House of Tarot cards, and the crewman had put too much lighter fluid on there.
Yeah.
So she had to get her lines in while the thing was burning very, very quickly, and she just managed to get the lines out like twice the rate that she wanted to emote. And while she's looking at the ashes, we see the script. If you look closely, the script is to the left of the table on the divan, and that was actually the Dark Shadow. They forgot about that. They left the script in there, so that goes into the final scene. But I really thought that Jonathan in general, that Jonathan and Laura Parker really shone in this.
Yeah.
This was about them. This was about his finding out that she is a witch. Remember that. Remember what led up to that, where he accidentally heard her, chanting the spell, the House of Cards spell, and then one thing starts, leading to another, and how Ben has to write the name, the letter A, which Angelique never even picked up. She never realized, but she could make Ben mute, but she never thought that he could write, and it was because Barnabas had taught Ben how to write that he was able to communicate all this to her. And then the storm and the thunder and lightning that occurred between the two.
It's always storming there. When is it not storming?
But especially with them. I mean, you didn't need stormy weather to see what was going on with them inside. And then the idea that she's so, I don't know, the Angelique character, Keith, you're better at this than I am, but you're better at this than I am. But the Angelique character is so screwed up. What is she, borderline or something like that? I mean, she's.
Well, I mean, Angelique, I think the problem that we have a little bit with Angelique, it's really kind of hard to find much about her because we don't know nothing about her past or anything about her. I mean, like, it's kind of interesting because, like, Josette, you see Josette, you think, okay, spoiled little rich girl. Right. You see Barnabas, it's like, okay, well, basically, he's kind of a spoiled boy, man child, I guess we'll put it. And you see Millicent, that she's a silly girl, and then you kind of see Naomi, and Naomi is like this person that basically
she's the unhappy lush.
The unhappy lush, and then we got the strong husband. But I'm saying that you can see, but even Abigail, you see Abigail, and from Abigail's lines, you know exactly her backstory. You can put all her backstories. Right. But when it comes to Angelique, for some reason, and this has nothing to do, and I don't know, maybe they wanted this gray area with her. But you don't know anything about her. You know that she's in love with Barnabas, but the thing is that she's obsessed with Barnabas to the point where she's almost a stalker. She's kind of stalking him.
She is a stalker.
Very possessive.
And but then at the same time, she's kind of a spoiled brat to the simple fact that she doesn't get what she wants. I mean, she does, like, she's like the bad seed all over again. And if, like, she doesn't get it, she's going to hit you with her shoes, sort of thing, and kill you to get what she wants. So there is that kind of aspect about her. But I also say that, but what's also interesting about Angelique, also that she does this horrible stuff, but at the end of the day, she doesn't seem, she's kind of like I'm going to call her a millennial. For the simple fact that she doesn't realize that for whatever you do, there are cause for your actions, right. And that there's always a comeback. Like for the instance with Jeremiah, she's the one that caused that. Jeremiah comes back from the grave, tries to get his revenge by putting her into the grave, and she's like, "Why is this happening to me?" But it's like, well, you're kind of the cause of this. You kind of brought this on yourself, and she always seems a bit oblivious to this sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But we also learn in this segment that she does feel redemption, that she has this feeling that that she does know when she's gone too far, and that what she does try to stop the curse, from Barnabas going into the curse. She does try really, really hard for that. So we know that she does have a guilt complex involved in the Angelique character as well.
Well, when she sees the consequences, as you stated, she goes ahead and does this. And she goes ahead and does this out of pure malice and pure rage and pure jealousy and betrayal and whatever. And then she sees the consequences. She sees what's happening, just like when she caused him to start to choke. And when she saw that, she got all of a sudden extremely guilty. And she said, "Oh, no, I didn't expect it to go this far." That kind of thing. And it's the same thing that while he's dying of the vampire bite, she's trying to cure him because she thought that he was trying to kill her. I mean, she's got a flesh wound, for God's sakes. But, well, of course.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit odd. I mean, she gets shot in the shoulder. And
she's dying?
Yeah, and it's like, oh my gosh, she's a drama queen sort of thing. But then again, it's like, but then again, I mean, Barnabas thinks he's killed her as well. It's kind of like.
Well, Barnabas hopes he's killed her. I think it's a wish fulfillment on his part.
Yeah, but it's not many. I mean, the thing is, if you're going to shoot someone, shoot him in the head. That way you're sure they're not going to get back up. That would have been it. That would have been enough horror films that if you shoot someone in the head, they don't get back up.
Even though you don't see the smoke when the gun discharges. Now, come on. I mean, give me that was the worst blooper of all. Because I think they did do that later on. They made up for that because you actually saw a discharge when the gun went off, and we're not going to talk about that in this block. But yeah, I mean, so she does something terrible. Then when she sees what's going on, she realizes. Then the impact of what she did come to her, and she tries to prevent it, but she can't. She can't. What's done is done. Because if she had been able to prevent it, he wouldn't have become a vampire. And then who knows?
She does try to give him eternal happiness it backfires on
with the stake.
She does try to give him eternal rest, which is probably the best gift you can give to someone.
It was so she does. So she's not a sociopath, although she has.
She knew he was going to come after her too, so she did have something in it for herself.
Yeah, but I also think that how I picked up on that basically is that she felt so guilty that I think she realized that she went too far.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think she's one of these people that if you have an argument with, they go for the jugular, but what they're saying to you, they don't really mean. It's just that they're just fighting back. And I guess that if you're going to put this into any kind of context about what kind of upbringing she has, it sounds like someone who's always on the defensive anyway.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and she looks at Josette like Josette's spoiled. She gets everything that she wants and no one cares, you know. And meanwhile, Angelique has to work for everything she wants. Okay, she's using black arts in this case, but it doesn't I don't think from what we can gather that Angelique had a very good life. I mean, she's a servant girl. What kind of life is that?
The only thing we know is that her mother apparently taught her about the medicinal arts, which is what she's, and that, but again, that's really a cover for her witchcraft. So, and of course, Laura Parker explores this all these years later when she does the Angelique's Descent book, and that's the first time that we get a real picture of the origin of Angelique. But I also want to say something regarding Vickie. Now, one of the things that Alexandra Moltke always was lamenting was that Dan Curtis never gave her a chance to play Vickie as an evil character or a vampire. But in this block, actually, Angelique is pretending to be Vickie in terms of luring Sarah out into the outside. So Alexandra Moltke actually has a voiceover where she's being a little evil or seductive with Sarah, telling Sarah to come to Collinwood. And I thought that was interesting, and I think that's something that's often overlooked. So there was actually a few lines of dialogue where Vickie got to emote and act like where Alexandra Moltke got to emote like more of a seductive kind of Vickie, something that you never saw before and that you'll never see again. So I
do think Angelique is basically hell hath no fury as a woman scorned. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, Barnabas is basically the catalyst that causes this family to go to ruin, really. Because if he didn't treat Angelique like a tart to begin with, none of this stuff would have happened. Exactly,
and also if he didn't promise, makes promises that he doesn't really intend on keeping, and but there is, but her manipulation. I think there are sociopathic elements, but there is remorse. You don't see that in sociopaths. You don't see remorse in sociopaths. Yeah. But so that's why I say she's not a sociopath, but there are certain elements to that, and whatever has made her the way she was. I also think the scenes with Ben and Barnabas once he becomes a vampire are very powerful. I really loved there's one point where Barnabas chokes Ben, and he says, "I would never have done it," because he thought Ben betrayed him. And he said, "I would never have done that before I became what I was." And Barnabas talks about his change, about the drastic change has gone through his life and how he has to adapt to it. And now you see that this is no longer the mama's boy. Once he becomes a vampire, he's no longer the papa's boy or the mama's boy or the spoiled rich kid. Now he finds himself invested with a lot of power that he never thought he would have, and he doesn't know how to handle it, but he handles it the best way he could, and he juxtaposes that with his severe guilt, the sympathetic vampire that we've all known to come and love, and he juxtaposes the evil vampire with the sympathy, and that he feels horrible that he's doing this to people. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And that's what attracts us to it.
I sit there and say that I think also in this block is where that's when we actually see Barnabas become interesting.
Yes.
During this whole time. That all of a sudden it's like there's a turn, and we do see the character become a lot more interesting.
Yes.
I had to sit there and say, going back to Ben, I had to sit there and say that this is probably some Ben's character's greatest stuff going through this block as well. We get to see a change from someone who's kind of fumbling and kind of slow. I mean, he comes across as kind of slow, and all of a sudden it's like we finally realized that he's not as slow as we thought he was.
Right.
And I thought that was a very interesting turn for a character. We saw some growth development in that character, which we haven't seen before.
They gave him more dimension.
And I think it's, not to go ahead of where we are, but I think seeing this block, I think this is why David Thayer, the actor, becomes such a vital part later on in the Dark Shadow series.
Agreed. A seminal part, because he's always Barnabas's. He takes over the Renfield role, but without the. Without the I'll do whatever you want. I mean, he'll talk back to him. He'll talk back to Barnabas, which is one thing Renfield never would have done.
No, he becomes like the voice of reason, which is interesting, because it would have been very easy to throw him into that sidekick, bumbling fool like the Renfield kind of character who's a bit mad or a bit slow. But what we do get is we get a sidekick who's trying to keep morality very, very much in fashion and make sure that Barnabas sticks to him. Listen, you may have be turned into this, but you still have morality. You need to hold on to that morality.
And he helps him to hold on to that morality. He helps to remind him of that morality. And at the same time, Barnabas realizes that he needs him. He needs Ben. He needs somebody to watch out, and that's an interesting point. Barnabas is completely helpless during the day. He knows it. Whatever he's going to do, whatever nastiness, whatever power he's going to have comes to him at night. And then during the day, anybody can get to him and stake him. He's completely vulnerable, completely helpless. He needs Ben. And it's worth more his while to keep Ben around than it would be to kill him, because if he killed him, then, sooner or later, then he'd really be alone. Because he's feeling alone the way it is. He really is. I mean, he's thinking about Josette. That's another thing. It's another aspect of the guilt that he feels, that he wants to be near Josette again. Ben is trying to tell him to talk him out of it. And then he realizes, no, his lust is going to overtake him, and he can't go near Josette right now. And that where we end that block is where Josette finds out. Josette sees him, finds out about him, runs to the cemetery, and he's about to bite her in the end. He's about to succumb to his, although he tried to tell her just to get away from him. But, of course, she wouldn't. At this point, Josette is actually seducing him, which I find is really something she couldn't have done when he was alive.
But I find that with Josette's kind of odd character, actually, because, first of all, I love the ghost of Josette, and I love the mystery of Josette. And now that we have the reality of Josette, I feel slightly let down, because even when she goes after Victoria or something like this, it's almost like she kind of reminds me of this person. You know how sometimes you get this person who'll say yes to anything just to be liked, and she's kind of like that. She's like, she's
annoying.
If she flutters back and forth, she's not strong in any of her convictions. It's like,
she has a low self-esteem. You think she has a low self-esteem?
Well, I think it's that she never had to think for herself, and now that she has to think for herself, is that she doesn't know what to think, sort of thing.
And jumps on the bandwagon that works for her.
Yeah, precisely. And, the whole thing with Barnabas is kind of like, well, you made a play for Jeremiah. You sit there and said, oh, you're in love with him. He's now on the ground. And now it's like, okay, now I'm alone. Well, I don't want to be alone. So I'm going to go for the next best thing, which is going to be Barnabas. And I know that she was under a spell and stuff like this. But, you kind of have this. And then you got like, oh, Victoria, I'm your friend. They shouldn't be doing this to you, da-da-da. Now I'm turned against Victoria because, and it's kind of like, what we have is the strong ghost of Josette, who's the protector of the Collins family, and then what we're getting, the reality is and then the stories and the myths and the legends, and then the reality is like it's kind of a wishy-washy rich girl who basically just will kind of turns on her smile just to get what she wants, and she doesn't get what she wants. She kind of bats her eyelashes and hope that will help her, sort of thing. So it's not like this strong, formidable character that we thought Josette was going to be. And I think Kathleen Scott does this fantastically well, because she does this part very, very well. But
and also remember that now Andre's out of the picture. David Ford was getting divorced from Nancy Barrett, and so he needed to take time off. So they wrote him out. They wrote the character saying he went to New York, and so now Josette doesn't have the father, who is really more of a bastion to her, and deals with Nia.
Even the Natalie character is wishy-washy as well.
Natalie's turning into wishy-washy. I agree. Now Natalie's turning into a more.
She's still pretty good though. She's still brought a lot to it. She's still trying to be the doctor in between centuries though.
Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with Grayson's Hall performance. I'm talking about it's just the character herself. It's like, okay, no, this is wrong. We shouldn't be doing this, Victoria. Yes, we should be doing this, Victoria. And the next thing you know, she's like, okay, I'm now going to light the firework to burn this witch.
Right.
And it's kind of like, but I guess I guess it's quite interesting because you kind of think that, Natalie Dupree is kind of likes the dark arts anyway. She likes tarot. She likes, all that sort of stuff. So she does have her foot in that doorway. So I guess what's kind of disconcerting is that when all this stuff goes on and she sees a lot, she does see a lot. She stands back and she looks at everything and beyond, when she got turned into, when, not Jeremiah, what's, the father,
Joshua.
When he gets turned to Joshua, and Joshua gets turned to a cat, she puts it all together because she always stands back. Right. But then it seems like, but she's easily swayed either by Abigail and that's what's a bit odd about that character. I love her. I love watching her, see what she can come out with. And of course, we're going to see different shades of this character come out later on when we go through different timelines. But when you look at it from the whole story and you stand back from the story, it's kind of like, okay, well, she's not as strong as you think she is. She kind of goes with the flow, like mob mentality. She's part of the mob mentality.
I think also, and it's interesting if you want to think of a crossover, and of course you are doing Bewitched as well, but look at the marriage between Barnabas and Angelique as opposed to the marriage between Samantha and Darren. And Barnabas and Angelique, of course, this marriage is not based on love. This marriage is based on lust, and I mean maybe Angelique loves Barnabas, but in a twisted way, in a possessive way. It's not really true love. It's more of a possessive kind of love. Barnabas doesn't love Angelique at all at this point, and you can compare that to Samantha and Darren, who met, fell in love with each other. They have a true love with each other, which sticks through thick and thin. Where Darren is just telling Samantha, "Come on, be immortal," that kind of thing, and that's an interesting thing because in Dark Shadows, it's at one point Angelique says, "If you want me to be immortal again, if you don't want me to use my powers at any time, I'm willing to do that." Angelique actually says that to him. I'm kind of wondering if the writers somehow were trying to borrowing or were trying to. It might be too much of a stretch, but I do see but the point is that the Barnabas Angelique marriage is based on is based on an unhealthy premise, whereas the Darren Samantha marriage is based on a healthier one.
I do also think that maybe Angelique might have said that because marrying Barnabas does come with some entitlement as well. She'll be the lady of the house, why he's the lord of the manor. And
she's very willing, very willing once Joshua approaches her. When Joshua first approached her and wanted to buy her off with $10,000 in gold, she wasn't willing to do that. But once Barnabas died, then she wanted to get the hell out of there very, very quickly because she did not want to be the retribution of. And so when Joshua then comes to her, now she makes a deal with him. Where he'll give her $20,000. He's got the passbook for her. Just sign a piece of paper, and she signed it. Actually, she signed it, and she's out of there. But then, she's dead. Yeah, but then she kind of disappears, and nobody. Well, when she's murdered, but nobody ever asks what the heck happened to Angelique. That guy just kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Well, you would think that Josette would have asked, or Natalie Dupree. I mean, she did ride on the boat with them to Collinswood. But then again, I mean, I guess we also have to look at the 1700s. That if a husband died, were the women allowed to own land?
No,
No, I don't think so.
they're pretty much property.
So that probably would have just reverted back to
exactly.
The father,
But Joshua gave her the passbook. You would think he would at least make some attempt to recover it. I mean, it's $20,000 lying in gold lines.
Well, unless he just thought that she took off.
Right.
I mean, but then again, I mean, all her clothes are still going to be at the house, though, isn't it? And a girl never leaves anywhere without her purse. So if her purse is still there.
There's a lot of unanswered questions there. I think that the writers just could not handle because there was so much going on.
I do think that this block is missing more Abigail. I would have loved to see more Abigail.
I agree.
Collins. She kind of fell off a little bit.
Also more Trask.
And Reverend. Well, I know the good thing about Reverend Trask is I know that in the next couple of blocks,
he has more things coming up.
He's going to be so strong, sort of thing. But I do have to query his way of getting Victoria out of the house with his witching stick. I'm not quite sure if you're so anti-witchcraft, anti-powers and anti-anything, would you overtly show that you are going to use this to exorcise a witch out of a house by using the same kind of spells that you think she's using?
I think they were so, Lacey's performance was so powerful. Lacey's performance was so powerful that that they were all concentrating on him rather than the instrumentation he was using, or just because it got to the point that it was like Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff could talk about names from the phone book. He could recite names from the phone book, and it would sound interesting. Vickie Rae, Keith Chaldo. It would sound very, But now Jerry Lacey got to the point where he could recite anything in that Trask voice, and people would be mesmerized to it. So I think when he did that little exorcism thing, I think people were more interested in what he said rather than anything else.
Now, I found another interesting thing about this is Josette, when she's the Collins Family History book, she kind of like flips through it like she's Googling her name, looking for her name. I thought that was quite funny. It's like, I'm in here somewhere. Oh, there I am. Sort of thing. But then, and I thought that was, kind of funny, in a retrospective kind of way. But I do wonder about Barnabas. Where Barnabas says that he will return for Josette on his deathbed. I found that kind of like, I'm sorry, but if I was really much in love with someone, they're saying that, and they're dying, and I'm next to their bed and I'm grieving, and they said to me, "I'll come back for you," I'd be like, "Nah, that's fine. You stay in your little spirit world. You can leave me alone."
Well, again, there's this melodramatic soap opera element, and also it's kind of like. There was a movie in the 50s with Tony Curtis when he played Houdini, and Janet Leigh, and he's, when he dies, he said, "I'll come back. I'll let you know that I'm, that I'm still there, that kind of thing." And that's what and I think the premise there is that this is the love does not die once you do. Love is eternal. So no matter where he goes, he's going to find a way. He's going to find a way to get back to her. He's going to find a way to communicate with her. What he didn't realize was that the way was right there for him to come back, and it wasn't what he expected, or what she expected either. But so I think but that's also for us, for the viewers, to say to realize that, we know he's coming back as a vampire, that kind of thing, and that's planting the seed in our heads. So my impression is that's why that happened.
We also learned through this block is that there is a new folklore to the Dark Shadows vampire, and that basically is that the only way to kill Barnabas with a stake, it has to be from a willow tree.
Yeah,
I thought that was interesting.
I wonder where they got that from, because there are plenty of other. There are other methods which they explore later on, which we're not going to get into, and they do explore the other stuff like the sunlight and everything else. But at this point, it's I think to prevent him from coming back as a vampire. He's dead, and they want to. And Angelique wants him. Angelique doesn't want him to suffer through the vampire experience. That's the only way to do it. That's the only way to do it. So I think that's what that's about.
Do we know why he choked her and didn't feed off her, or he did not realize that he needs to feed on the living in order?
Well, it's a funny question, because I mean, when he first sees her, you see him bare his mouth and you see if the fangs are there, but no, he doesn't feed on her, and that would have been the most interesting possibility of him making her a slave. Once, because she tried to make him a slave, but I don't think the writers thought of that. I think that would have been very interesting. So, but no, I think he just wants to. I don't think he knows enough about the vampire legend yet, because he comes back to Ben. I'm discovering that I have powers. I'm discovering that I have this need for blood. Well, nobody ever told him. He's going on pure instinct, and he's realizing this. So I think that when he choked her, I don't think he realized anything about. He didn't know anything about the vampire condition, so I think he felt that the best way to do, when she opened the coffin, he killed her, and he thought he was rid of her. He never thought she'd come back, and then that's when he discovered that he had needs, and that's how I think that happened.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, it's very well played. But then it's like, oh, why? It's almost like, oh, that's a wasted meal on you. And I found another thing. I found another interesting thing here is that we don't know what he can. Vampire legends, from what we have learned in the past, that if they get bit, they will come back as a vampire themselves. But we're never quite sure what's happening in the Dark Shadows vampire world yet.
So, no, we don't. That's very true. That's very true.
And now what happens is that we now cut to Victoria and her finally being, called out and sent to prison, and we get, Peter Bradford coming into the storyline and stuff like this.
Right.
I found it very interesting that when he asked her to sneak out, and she sneaks out because she's going to get the family book. I'm kind of wondering what she thought this family book was going to prove that innocence. For me, wouldn't you think this would make her more guilty of witchcraft or some kind of evil dealings going on?
Is that by her telling everybody and his mother's son that she came from the future, and that and everything about the book, she absolutely destroyed her own credibility in terms of. I mean, they really wanted to portray Vickie as a naive, as very naive, trusting in all the people that she met in order to help her out, almost childlike. And I think that certainly had the opposite effect, and that's, I think, what the writers intended, because nobody believed her, and that set up conflicts where everybody wanted her, where everybody thought she was a witch.
I do think that, going back to the previous block before, that I'm pretty sure that if Jeremiah did not look like he's had feelings for Vickie, I'm pretty sure that the timeline would have been gone a bit. I mean, I think things would have transpired differently with the same outcome, but a little bit longer. I think with Jeremiah. Remember, he was flirting with Victoria, and all of a sudden it seemed like Angelique stepped up her game from that point forward. It's like, oh, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So that made it quite interesting. But then you also think that if you're the wealth of knowledge and you know what these people's destinies are, I found it interesting that Victoria doesn't really try to step in and stop anything.
Because again, there's this helplessness about her. There's this vulnerability. She wants everybody else to help her out, to solve her problems for her. That's why the Peter Bradford character, I think, is so important. Because if it weren't for Peter Bradford, she'd be alone, period. Barnabas can't help her out anymore. He takes an almost paternalistic. I think it's very interesting that the pre-Barnabas vampire takes a paternalistic attitude towards Vickie. never really had that desire, for her that he now has in the present, where he wants her to be the next Josette. And where when he first met Vickie, of course, this is before the writers developed it, you could see that he was attracted to her. But the pre-Barnabas here is totally in love with Josette. So anybody else is really, he's able to deal with this with more of an even keel, and he just wants to help her. He likes her. Maybe there's a part of her in her own naivete that identified with his own naivete pre-Barnabas, and maybe there's a kindred spirit there.
I have to sit there and say, though, reflecting back about how he wants her to be new Josette, I would have to sit there and say that Vickie Winters is a lot like Josette, and as far as personality is concerned, that doe-eyed kind of, that naive, what you said, the naiveness that she seems to have with everything, and that we now learn that Josette actually is probably the same naive. She has that same naivety as well. So I guess that they're very much alike, which was quite interesting that we do get this, and I think we get this a lot more now that we know who Josette is. And then when we look at Vickie, and you can see that they're nothing really alike as far as looks or anything like that, but there's a lot of personality traits that they do share.
And maybe Curtis harped upon that.
Now, I thought what was really interesting is the Naomi character when she comes and visits Victoria. And I thought that was a very, very good scene where Victoria tells Naomi to keep Sarah inside. And I thought the way Naomi wants to believe her, but there's a lot of evidence that's pointing against Victoria, but Naomi's still trying to see the good in Victoria, and I like that scene. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was quite good to see a little bit of Joan Bennett, because I have to sit there and say, the storyline's moving so fast this time around, and God forbid, if you were watching this live back in the day and you missed one episode, I'm pretty sure you could have got lost very easily in what was going on because of the way the storylines are turning. But it was
go ahead.
It was good actually to see Naomi make an appearance and have that one scene with Victoria about
in the jail.
That there is good. I want to believe you. Everything points against you. I'll do what I can, and I thought that was very, very well written.
And it also shows the good. Whoever was writing knew the depth of Naomi's character. Naomi's essentially a good person. She's the one person that Angelique would never have harmed because Naomi was whatever Barnabas decided regarding the marriage, Naomi was going to go along with it. Naomi was going to did her best to accept Angelique into the family. Angelique never forgot this. And on more than one occasion, and so I don't think Angelique would have killed everybody else except for Naomi. She never would have harmed her. And Barnabas, of course, loved her. And so it's not surprising that the innocence that Vickie projects, I think, touched upon Naomi could see the good in people. That's the point. She can see the good in people, and Vickie, and she saw it in Vickie. And so that's why, and she says, I believe you. I don't know why I believe you. And that's important. I don't know why I believe you, but I believe you anyway. And no matter what happens afterwards, I think that she, and I think this kind of carried through, and I think that's what you're talking about.
I do think that the one person that Victoria should have shown that book to is probably Barnabas. Because it would have stopped Barnabas from staring up at the window at Sarah, who goes out and the cold. It's might have saved Sarah's life. But I also found interesting that I think we finally realized that Barnabas's eating habits become a lot more cleaner after the first kill, because he comes back a bit of a mess after when he kills.
I wonder where does he get the napkins? That kind of thing, or.
Well, he comes back with blood-stained face and all. And the thing I don't think up to this point, when Barnabas was feeding, we never saw him with a blood-stained face. So obviously, he became a more etiquette band
Maybe
player.
he stops off at the Eagle. Maybe after he attacks Ruby Tate, who incidentally is played by Elaine Hyman. And I thought that was very interesting because Elaine Hyman revitalized her career 30 years later and was on The Sopranos as Dot in 2004. And then went on went on to L.A., was it? No, it's a special victims unit. What was that? One Order Special Victims Unit. That's Elaine Hyman. That was Ruby Tate, and so maybe he kind of stopped off after he killed her. Maybe he stopped off at the Eagle to wash up. But yeah, where do you get that there? And that's where Sarah, when he sees Sarah, and she gets so frightened because she sees him with the blood coming down.
Yeah,
that was very interesting because doesn't that touch upon every kid is afraid of a nightmare like that where they're going to see blood on the a blood-stained individual with blood coming down the face. I mean, isn't that every kid's nightmare come to life? And that's what happens with her.
I also found what was quite interesting as well, that when she goes into the tomb, the door locks on her and she can't get out. It's almost like destiny is forcing this path on her, that that you need to die. Because it sounds not funny, because she goes in the tomb and then the door shuts and locks on its own accord, like something has pushed it and locked it, like destiny's come to call. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing to look at as well, that basically no matter what's going to happen, that Sarah has to die in order to make the present be what it is going to be.
That's interesting. That's interesting. And the whole thing, this whole thing is really a question of predestination versus free will. And, that's something that literature has encountered for thousands of years. And it's also essentially the time travel element. Can you change history, which has always been a fascinating thing. But it really touches upon, do people have the free will in terms of making different decisions to affect their lives differently? And time travel gives you the impetus, I think, to find that out. And do we have? But we do have destiny here. I think things, apparently the message is this is predestined to happen the way it should have happened. We don't know what would have happened with Phyllis Wicks and so forth, but actually we never know. What we do know that for some reason Phyllis Wicks was hung. Or am I thinking of later on? Am I thinking of the 91 series? The original series doesn't talk about Phyllis Wicks and what actually happened, and I think you talked about that possibility. What would have happened if it had played out the way it originally would have played out?
I think it probably have gone over a longer period of time. I think that's how I look at it.
Oh, that's what it was. Yes, but would it have come to the same end? Would she have been hung also for being a witch? Would Angelique have accused her of being a witch? Because Angelique would have been around. Josette would have come with Angelique, and Angelique probably would have tried the same thing. So it seems to me that history would have played itself out whether Vickie was there or not, except that Phyllis Wick would have been hung instead of Vickie, and. Because we know that that's the way it played itself out because Barnabas was a vampire and that's how he came about. So the answer to me is that there is predestination that shadows and visions that's the way that works out.
And I think that's quite an interesting thing that when you do look at Dark Shadows, because let's sit there and say that let's say that the writers decide to go in a different direction, that what would happen is that, if Victoria did go back and she was able to change anything, one minute situation, which means the Collins family, when she does go back, would be totally different than what she'd left behind.
Exactly.
They might not have the money that they have, or they might have more money. They could have anything. And I think, it's a bit like when I talk to patients in general, and they said, if I can go back in time and change anything, and I said, well, you go back and change one minute thing in your life, doesn't necessarily mean your life will be better or worse. It just means it's going to be different. The people are going to be different. Your relationship with these people are going to be different every little
but don't the patients expect life to be better, not different? And I think because that's what they're thinking. I mean, if they're in a hole, and if they're in a hole of their own making or by external forces that were outside their control, don't they think that I think the immediate assumption they have, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but the immediate assumption that they have from a patient standpoint is that their lives are going to be better, not different. And you as a therapist have to say to them, no, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
it's a bit like the podcast. I mean, if something happens and let's sit there and say that you didn't answer when we were looking for another podcast person, let's say it was someone else that did it instead and they signed on and you didn't do it. I mean, the podcast would have a whole different sound and a whole different way of put together that we have for the Dark Shadows.
Exactly.
And doesn't mean that it would be better or worse. It's just going to be different. And
it would be different. Now, whether that difference would have caused all the marvelous fans that we have today to listen to,
it's hard to say. There's just no way to gauge it. And it's a bit, it's almost like, like the friend that you have, like your best friend, just something happened. Let's sit there and say that you didn't say hello to that friend that day. Doesn't necessarily mean that they would end up being your best friend, the day after.
That's the paradox. That's the time paradox that the butterfly effect happens to come across. And one little ripple, if somebody threw a little pebble in a lake that was not supposed to have been thrown in the original timeline, the ripples that it causes will affect everything else to happen. But the Dark Shadows, and there are two or three rules about that. One rule is, it doesn't matter what you're going to do, you can't change history. Something's going to happen. It's always going to come around to the way it was originally supposed to be, and that's predestination. The other is that, yes, that's a Back to the Future thing. Yes, what you do is going to change it, but Back to the Future, it was changed for the better. And then the third is that you will change history, but you will change it for the worse. So you might as well leave it the way it was. And I think in Dark Shadows, we come to that. That's the writers felt, well, it better be the way it was, because if it's too different, then everybody's going to be confused. We're going to be lost, and that'll be the end of things.
But we do have to sit there and say that what's happening now with Victoria and stuff like this, without giving anything away, is going to have consequences later on down the road. So,
agreed.
So now, once Angelique dies, then we pretty much finish this block with Angelique's ghost appearing to Ben and saying that the curse placed on Barnabas must continue through eternity. And at that same time, we learn that Barnabas is going to meet Josette and fights from baring his teeth and feeding on her, which is quite an interesting thing that now we got Barnabas, who is now a new being, I guess is what we can call him, and a new personality, which he has become, but learning how to control that inner animal within him. I thought that was quite interesting. The
biggest challenge that he's ever had to face. He's never had to face. Before he became a vampire, all he had to do was working in the shipyards and doing what his father told him. And now, look at the bit, so when he talks about the drastic change, there's a line that Fritz says about the drastic change is going to, how drastic is that to be dealing with these feelings of the bloodlust and how to control that and to retain any sense of humanity. That's heavy stuff. That's really heavy stuff.
And this is probably the first time that Barnabas is actually in control of his life as well, which is quite interesting.
Interesting point. And such as it is, because it's not that much of a life to be in control of. I'll tell you that much. I mean, he's got to be careful. This is not like the Saint-Germain vampire, the Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, if you've ever read that stuff, that has gone through the centuries developing a real cultured attitude and is able to actually control things. This again is more the traditional 1940s universal vampire thing that Curtis grew up on and that he really loved, and he decided to infuse steal all of that and put it into Shadows. But I think it was Jonathan that talked them into the sympathy the sympathy role. And that was a brilliant stroke of luck on for them, and it was a brilliant idea on Jonathan Fritz's part to put that in there, because that was what made Shadows work. But is this the first time he's in control of his life? Well, yes, but it's not the life he thought he'd be in control of.
Well, it is part of that. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
I don't think he wished for that, though. I don't think he wished to become a vampire.
No, but that's what I'm saying. That you wish that it's like, I want to have control, but now that you got control, it's like, this is not the control I wanted. But it's control. It's a bit like Aladdin and the genie, right? You got to be careful what wish you wish for, because
in English, God, what is it? God, what is it? Man disposes. Oh, for God's sakes, God proposes and man disposes. In Spanish, it's Dios propone what is it? Dios propone y el hombre dispone. The bottom line is, in plain English, is that you can decide whatever you want to do, but if the God up there says you're going to do something else, that's what's going to happen, and he'll probably laugh at the way as he sees you as he tries to see you get out of that. So it's a shame. The Barnabas had this privileged life, and everything would have been great, and then Angelique comes into the picture, and boom. And much later, we're going to see something in Dark Shadows, which I don't want to get into now too much, but the idea of parallel time. What would have happened if he had never become a vampire? And that's going to answer your question, Keith.
This brings us to character breaks, where we're going to be discussing our favorite character for these episodes and our least favorite character for these episodes, and why. So who's your favorite character and who's your least favorite character of this block, John?
I have to say that the interplay, it's a tie between Jonathan and Laura Parker at this point. I think that the chemistry they had in the beginning when they were making out and everything is now we see the opposite side of that, when the hatred that Barnabas feels in terms of what he did to him. And you still got a chemistry, but it's a reverse kind of chemistry. And boy, the fireworks and the scenes are so well acted and well orchestrated. And I think that, and of course it's a well-known fact that Barnabas and Jonathan was nervous, but I really think at this point, Laura Parker actually brought him along, because I think that he fed upon the strength of her performance. And I think it helped him make his performance better. Now, I wish he were alive and I could have asked him that. But I get that sense. And even this part, you don't have as many bloopers. And of course, that's the pre-recorded segment that we do for fans. But I will say that we don't have as many bloopers in this one as we have seen in other blocks. And I think that's because everybody's working on getting everything together, but the writing was so strong, and the intensity was there, and you could see these people are really working on perfecting their characters and learning their lines. So my answer to your question, and I'm sorry to digress, but an answer to your question, definitely Frid and Laura Parker. Now, for the worst one, they all did such a good job. But I mean, I would, if I'm going to default and say that the guy who played the doctor, he had a one day role.
Yeah.
I think we're going to. He's essentially. What did they need him for? Angelique didn't want a doctor there, but in reality, she was right. What the hell did they need him for? Because they're going to say they're going to want to take him away. They're going to want to isolate him to get rid of the plague. And what the heck is it good? Well, Natalie, I should say, insisted on the doctor, and the doctor goes ahead and says the same thing. And then Angelique says, well, I am not I am not naive in the world of medicine, and I think that's it. So now that Angelique is saying, "Hey, listen, doctor, I know more than you. I know just as much as you." I thought that was great. So yeah, the Stamberger, Jack. I have his name somewhere, and I have his name somewhere. It was Jack Stamberger. I was right, Jack Stamberger. So Jack Stamberger, I'm sorry, but in my mind, you were the worst one on this block. But it was nice to see you. Go ahead, Keith.
My favorite character, I'm going to go with Ben. I think because we saw such an emotional and growth with this character that I wasn't expecting to see. And I thought that was a really nice surprise. And I love how he went from bubbling kind of idiot to someone who's being pressed upon to someone who's able to help put, he's the link that puts Barnabas on the right track about what the hell is really going on in his own house, to the point where he actually becomes the morality compass for Barnabas. And to see this growth in the character, I thought was fantastic. Especially in this block, we see this whole growth of this character that you don't expect to see. So for me, Ben has got to be my favorite character.
You think he replaces Willie in terms of that moral compass? Because I don't think Barnabas listened to Willie.
Willie was always too weak. Willie was always afraid of Barnabas, but Ben's not afraid.
Ben's not afraid of him. Ben will stick up to him. Yep.
And Ben, Ben's like, he's the moral compass, and I thought that was wonderful the way to see that character.
Okay.
My least favorite character is going to be Josette, and I this has nothing to do with the actress. We're just talking about the character here, and this has to be with a simple fact that I think that Josette is kind of like the Dark Shadows fall guy to a certain extent. Where basically we're painted with a whole year of Josette's ghost and who she's going to be. And then when we finally do meet her, it's kind of like having all this hope and aspirations, but like, I'm going to really enjoy this. It's going to be great. I'm going to love this. And then you kind of get it, and it just doesn't come to fruition the way you think it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So this has nothing to do with the actors as with Josette. And the thing is that she's kind of toing and froing. She's kind of giddy. She's not this strong protector. She's not the strong character that I was hoping that she'd be. Okay. And that's the only reason why. And I think that in this block, I think it became more apparent that basically, she runs with the foxes and with the hounds. And I would have liked her to be if she was a bit strong in her convictions, even if she was a bit stronger in her convictions, and no matter what those convictions were, that she just stayed strong to them, I probably would have had a bit more respect for the Josette character.
Well, if she was stronger, she wouldn't have killed herself, and I think that's of course, we all know that from the book that she's destined to kill herself, and that's and I think there's a basic. That's why I asked about a lack of self-esteem. And I think that there is this, Josette was just as much a mama's boy, a mama's girl as Barnabas was a mama's boy.
Well, she's a daddy's girl, isn't she?
She's a daddy's girl. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Daddy's girl.
Yeah. So she's.
The thing is, but she never had to think for herself, did she? Everything was thought out for her. It was thought about who she's going to marry. I guess everything was planned for her.
What about him? What about Barnabas? Everything was thought out for him. What the hell did he ever do before this all happened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at least the Barnabas seems to have more of a brain and able to put things together. He's always trying to put, he may not have all the pieces there, but at least he's trying to put the puzzle together.
That's true.
She's just kind of like, she's kind of person that has like a square peg, and she's just taking a hammer to the square peg and trying to get into that round hole. Gotcha. And not realizing it's like, well, try another peg or try a peg with a better hole, so gotcha. Sort of thing.
Interesting.
So Morning Has Broken. What are your final thoughts of these episodes?
Excellent block. Handling 4 plots at once, or 3 plots at once. Juggled them expertly. They may have had a timeline because they needed to get back to the present. But it's not over yet. It's not over yet because there's plenty more in terms of exploring Barnabas adapting to his new life as a vampire. I think they just wanted to knock him off already and make a vampire out of him and let that whole thing play itself out. And whatever bloopers there weren't a lot of them, but I did like the House of Cards, as I stated before. I liked the, if you look the bat that attacks Barnabas, if you look closely, the shadow of the bat is, you can see the shadow of the bat. The bat is in the wings, so to speak. The shadow of the bat on the chair. before and yes, you hear a crash, but there's no window breaking, and you see a shot, but there's no discharge coming out of the gun. But and of course that's all endearing. But other than that, I think it's a really solid, and it sure isn't the Dark Shadows we started out with, isn't it? Where we have to wait 3 months for an autopsy report to come out. It is moving now. It is moving, and even as our guest star pointed out, it was moving at breakneck speed, and it was engrossing, and people were getting involved in it, and this was when it was really starting to pick up. So that's what I think of that block. How about you?
Me, I love this block. I think it's fantastic. And then the block before this, I have to sit there and say that there is enough to chew on and take through. Though I do think that sometimes the breakneck speed is a bit sometimes too fast. It would be nice if they.
Well, you have to keep.
If I'm going to nitpick, this is only nitpicking. If I'm going to nitpick, as I said before, I would like to have some plot lines breathe a little bit, just so you can get your head around it, and then you take a breath and then here we go again, sort of thing. It's almost like the roller coaster is great when you're going really fast, but you kind of want that, but when you're going up that hill, you kind of want to do it a bit more slowly. So that way, when you go fast again and then up again. So to light the pace, to just take some breathing. It'd be nice to be able to mourn Sarah's death a bit more. And see how it affected other people, and just little things. But this is nitpicking, but just the little things like that where they could add 1 or 2 more episodes to see what the devastation in the family is because of this sort of thing. Just for emotional resonance for me personally.
I have to tell you, I thought the best scene was a farewell scene between Sarah and Barnabas. I got to say again, every time I see that, a tear comes to my eye. That I think really wraps up all of this. Now you know why there was all this tension going on between Sarah's ghost and Barnabas before they went to 1795. This now wraps it up, and now we know what the heck happened, and now we know now we have the rationale for when she comes back 200 years later, and there's this. She's very different. She's very different. She still loves him, but she's his mother. She's very pissed off at him. He's very pissed off because he's going ahead and being.
We understand Barnabas' guilt over her death now, because it's him that caused her death. Really,
now we know.
If we stop leering outside of people's windows, she'd be alive today.
You just can't, just give him. Can't teach him anything good. What can I tell you? All right.
To our visitors out there, the reason why Vickie Rae's voice hasn't been heard because she had to go off to an urgent
I disposed of her.
And so that's the reason why she's missing for the rest of this. But she will be back in full swing for our next episode. As I said before, Jesse's not here either because he's in Salem doing some stuff for us for the Bewitched episode. So that's the reason why Jesse's not here. So that brings us to the end of the Literary License Podcast. We want to thank Roger Davis for joining us, and let you know that next week we'll be covering Soap episodes 1 through 8, season 1, and this will be our first ever retrospective. For people who are looking for a regular episode of Soap, we will end up covering all of Soap, but we're doing those in the months that there are 5 weeks where we have to have an extra episode, and Soap will be our extra episode. So we're going to do this one next month, and then I think the next one from episode 9 through 16 will be in February. But don't worry, folks, we'll end up covering all of Soap for you. So there you go.
And I will be crossing over from the crypt to join you for the soap retrospective, and I look forward to that.
And to let you know, I will not be your master of ceremony on soap. Vickie Rae is going to be your master of ceremony. So thank you, Roger Davis, for joining us today on the Dark Shadows Literary License Podcast, episodes 396 to 418.
Listen, and Roger, do you have anything you want to say to the fans before we leave?
Well, first, yes, I want to say that your loyalty, your devotion to Dark Shadows is very touching and very moving and means a great deal to us. Don't think for one moment that we are not appreciative or that we are not aware of just how much Dark Shadows means to you. And you need to know that it means the same to us. But what really means something is you guys are devoted to us and you care about us both as actors and as characters. And that's you can, nobody can take that away from you at any time. So God bless you all. And I hope to see you on the 31st of October for Halloween with the cast.
Also, let you know that next month we'll be entering November. Our book, this classic book to screen, will be called The Wild. We'll be carrying on with Bewitched again. And I think our two films are going to be Them, which is about giant ants in the 1960s, and Eight-Legged Freaks, where we'll be joined by Avram Atherton, the director of Eight-Legged Freaks. So he's actually going to be joining our podcast to discuss Eight-Legged Freaks and the film Them. And of course, we'll be back with Dark Shadows at the end of November. So just remember to like, share, and comment if you like on our Dark Shadows podcast. And make sure that you join up to our newsletter at www.llpodcast.com. So it's good night for myself. And good night, Tom.
Good night, everybody. Happy Halloween to all.
And good night, Vickie, wherever you are.
Been a Literary License Podcast production. Till next time, and don't forget to comment or share. We so admirably appreciate your support. Now it's back to Mr. Barnabas, Mr. Joshua, and all the goings on at Collinwood. And remember the witch!